A week closer to the cricket season starting despite 3 one-day internationals being played around the country and a series already run and won. But who is playing? Why are they playing? Why are the others not playing? Are Pakistan good? Yes. It turns out they are very good, and they demolished Australia 2-1 in a best-of-3 series for the first time since 2002. We have an answer in the Sheffield Shield and Australia A bat-off, and the winner is Nathan McSweeney. But he doesn't open. What about your guy? Why did they pick him? Are we angry? Are we sad? Are we anything? Can we please just get to the cricket that counts? All these questions and more before we speak to Pete Lalor and Gideon Haigh of Cricket et al. To get their take on the summer ahead and the state of the game, and indeed, the nation, Pezza. This episode is brought to you by Smith Optics Australia. Use the code FAST for 25% off your order at smithopticsaustralia.com. And inside that order, you get a little TGC sweet treat inside there as well. A TGC cloth for your shades that make you so very, very fast, because at the moment it is triathlon season, Pezza. smithopticsaustralia.com. Use the code FAST for 25% off your order. Pezza, has the cricket started yet? Is it the cricket season yet?
I don't know if it's cricket season yet. I think that's one problem with this ODI loss. Here goes. Normally when we lose white ball cricket, we're smart enough to hide it.
Yeah.
To hide it in another country and behind a hard-to-access paywall.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think that's the problem with this 2-1 loss is I see the hue of the summer. Australia doesn't lose games like this when the summer is creeping in, so we can only conclude that Cricket Australia doesn't think summer has started because we've got to hide our white ball losses.
Yeah.
Okay, they've got to be hidden. It's funny, isn't it? And I'm looking forward to sinking teeth into this show, unlike the teeth that we were almost sunk into Beefy through the week. But, we're seeing themes that are concerning, do we have a run crisis in Australian cricket, in global cricket? Do we have an ageing team? Are they too old, or India indeed older? Is there a bit of entitlement creeping into this side? Are McDonald and Cummins and co treating us like fools, and particularly the fans of Western Australia like fools? Why, despite all that, do I still expect to win 6-0? Why are the News Corp papers using Hindi in their headlines?
Right.
I disagree. Finally that's happening. Finally they're following our lead. So, I'm looking forward to sinking teeth in.
Well, you mentioned it there, but let's talk about the big thing of the day. Ian Botham fell into some crocodile-infested waters. Now, Merv Hughes and Ian Botham are out fishing in the Northern Territory, as we see here with via Syrian Botham's Instagram page, which I call Syrian Botham. Syrian Botham.
Siri, and it's a partnership with Siri.
And Sirius FM, the online radio station.
Thank you.
So they were fishing in the NT, and Beefy's fallen into the water before others pulled him out, including Big Merv himself. Now, he said this: I was out of the water quicker than I went in. Quite a few sets of eyes were having a peep at me, Botham said.
What it would give.
Luckily, I had no time to think about what was in the water. At the end of the day, Crocodile Beefy survived. The guys were brilliant. It was just one of those accidents. It's all very quick, and I'm okay now. Now, I've seen some pictures here of some bruising on the great man, that being Syrian Botham. Some heavy bruising. Now, so Pezzy, you spent some time in the NT. See you in the NT. Crocodile-infested waters. Put that in the absolute bin category for me.
True though.
Fuck that.
It's true. This isn't like Australian hyperbole. Yeah, those crocs would be there for sure, but
it's a win for Australia.
And as I read in the articles as well, he just got his flip flop stuck.
Yeah,
that can happen.
It has been a tough week for Aussies. With a series loss that I didn't catch it myself, but I heard about it, and a lack of runs perhaps. But an Englishman getting in trouble. With our environment, with his flip flops.
And Australia needs this right now because we've got an identity crisis. No runs, aging team.
Right.
But. Got to be nothing better than Merv Hughes saving you, from the peeping eyes of crocs in Northern Australia. I mean, who better would you want, than Steve Irwin, RIP. But I also thought it interesting, old blokes saving other old blokes. It's a bit of a theme for this summer as well.
Yep.
Just hoping some old bloke can pull another bloke out of the water to save the series.
Yeah.
So, well done. I'm happy for Beefy, happy for Merv.
Yeah, well done to everyone involved.
Yeah.
Pezza, a shout out to our members that make all this happen for AskTGC Fridays, which are now available on Apple For the frictionless experience, you can go to the Apple feed and click on the episode. That's just how the internet works. It'll prompt you to subscribe. There's a couple of clips. There's also a free trial. That was that's finished now.
Is it?
Yeah, free trial done. On Apple, so you can sign up there. It's also apple.co/TGC. Or if you prefer your cricket with a bit of community
with people. If you like people.
If you like other people, then you can go to patreon.com/greycricket. You can sign up there. And it's the same experience where you have some small people around you.
Roughly the same price. There's give or take some VAT and tax and things like that. We've set it the same price. The tech companies doing what they do.
Yeah.
But if you do sign up as a member, and that is happening in record numbers, has to be said. This week you're going to get #AskTGC Fridays, as you do every week, and you're going to learn about bronzing up, what that means.
Yep.
Okay, policemen, we're told, know what that means,
yep.
but they like to bronze up at different times,
yep.
So do prisoners. You're going to learn about the Australian cricket figure who encouraged players to dip their head when they hit sixes, just teaching the players after the game.
That's how we did it.
Dips his head. So you're just going to get under the hood a little bit of cricket. If you want bonus content from TGC, an extra hour every week.
If you want to sink your teeth into this summer, Apple or Patreon, that's how you can do it. You can also find the Patreon feed on Spotify. If you go to TGC Patreon, then you can find it on Spotify as well. But you can sign up there, the Patreon, or through Apple if you want to get behind TGC and become a member of that community.
And if you're basically becoming a shareholder, and now not officially, not in sort of ASIC terms.
Oh, not in any sort of formal way.
No. There's no legal. You've got no legal rights.
You actually lose rights by doing it.
That's right. But you do, if you go via Patreon, for example, you do get the right to rinse us on the chat there, and sometimes we'll reply. Sometimes we'll bite back. The baring teeth seems to be coming up a fair bit in the show.
And we're 3 minutes in.
Yeah.
Also, a shout out to our guests today, Pete Lalor and Gideon Haigh, two luminaries writing at Cricket et al. And indeed, TGC's very own S. Perry.
Indeed. If you sign up for Cricket et al. As well, and look, what we're doing here is just trying to make an orbit, a little universe of cricket for people where, if you want to read Gideon and Pete, occasionally Pezza, the two best writers in the game, and Pezza, then you can do that at Cricket et al. Then you get a TGC podcast as well, Patreon, whatever. This week, if you sign up to Cricket et al, you're going to get articles on George Bailey's selection process. You're going to get one on Pat Cummins. You're going to get Gideon reviewing Joe Aston's book on Qantas, which is like the way Gideon can excoriate, not Joe, but just people and things. He quite likes the book, but I won't give it away too much. But worth signing up alone. There's political intrigue vis-a-vis the alleged ball tampering in Mackay, written by myself. You're going to get that at Cricket et al. You're going to get something basically every day for summer.
So just get your teeth out of the glass next to the bed, and sink your teeth into the summer.
Sorry for the value, sorry for the content.
TGC expanding into the eyes, the hearts, and the minds. Also, Wasted Saturdays. We still need your clips via DM every single week. If something outrageous has happened in your life or indeed the weekend, please do get that clip via your frog boxes and etc. Preferably not some grainy Zapruder film iPhone footage.
Unless it's good.
Unless it's crystal clear and in 4K. But send those clips in via DM, and another episode dropping tomorrow for Wasted Saturdays right there on the YouTube. All right. Let's talk Australia stuff, Pezza. So Australia have announced a squad of cricketers that are going to play against India in the Border Gavaskar Trophy series. And the headline is McSweeney is in, and he's going to open the batting for Australia. So that's annoyed heaps of people.
Yeah,
it's upset others. Good. It's made some South Australians very proud. They're going to have 3 sackers into the side. Queenslanders rightfully saying, well, actually,
danger.
He's one of ours. I would have preferred this if he was from New South Wales, just to annoy even more people.
Wound people up further. Yeah. That's right. We'll get that with Constance.
But yeah, that's right. His time will come. But McSweeney.
Sooner rather than later, possibly.
Yeah. The winds of change are flicking through the old nostrils there.
Because Sam Constance has a Usman Khawaja 37 at the SCG written all over him this summer. God. And what a 37 it'll be.
It's already fantastic, yeah.
Can't wait.
In front of his home crowd.
That's right.
Cranbrook. McSweeney, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about McSweeney?
Well, firstly, he's emerged as the least shit batter from the Great Australian Bat Off, or Gabbo.
Great Australian Gabbo. I like
Gabbo.
it. Okay, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Look, let's face it. Here goes. No one in Australian cricket or global cricket, but who cares about global cricket, is scoring safe bulk runs
That's
in the
since
way
Bradman.
we're used to. Exactly. So all things being equal, that is, everybody batting with a variation of eyes being painted on,
Yeah.
selectors have gone for the new toy.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
We've got a toy-based selection. We wanted a new toy. We got a new toy. Retail politics, retail therapy. Everyone's eyes are painted on. The ex-pros who were given every opportunity to score runs couldn't get it done. Say ex-pros, current pros. The old pros is what I mean. The beaten up Holdens. And so they've gone for the guy who might be a generational player, right? Now, people point out he averages 30 in first-class cricket, but you fail to understand that 30 is the new 40 in this current environment. Did you not listen to the Usman Khawaja interview? You know?
It's hard.
40 is the new 50.
Right.
Now, alarmingly, like when there's a coveted spot in the Australian batting order, this is different to bowling, right? If you're getting into the kind of the visceral state of the Australian mind, and you've got to remember the last debutant in the Australian batting order was Will Pucovski.
Prodigal runs himself.
Prodigal runs.
Yeah.
Will Pucovski shaped hole in the Australian order right now. That was in 2021. So when there's a spot available in the Australian batting order, a coveted rare spot, you know, we ask for nothing more than for blokes to bash the door down.
Yeah.
All right? To strip naked,
Yep.
put on their Doc Martens,
Yep.
get a sledgehammer, and start hammering away.
Romper stomper stuff.
Romper stomper stuff,
Yep.
but naked. So the nation's concerned. You know, we haven't had a sledgehammer with Doc Martens on the door.
No, we haven't. Skinhead.
The game's changing.
Yeah.
All right? We've had a rap at the door. We've had a polite knock. Someone's rung a doorbell.
Yeah.
On occasion.
Yeah. Is anyone home?
Yeah. Hello. The blokes in Australia, blokes are meant to be filling their boots, right? Not just in the domestic ranks, at test level too. Last year was meant to be a fill your boots summer.
Yeah.
Last 2 years a fill your boots summer.
Yep.
What have we had? Slip on a Haviana, plug undone.
Yeah.
It's about as good as it's got. So that's the state of batting. I wonder if there's a run crisis in this country. You know, is there a run crisis around the world? The games, I'm not even talking about cricket now. I'm talking about civil society.
Yeah.
1,000 run Shield season, dead. Averaging 50 in Shield, dead. You know, life is now having a stick on drop-in decks on suburban ovals, trying to eke out runs in 2 half seasons, which bookend the bucket on Bont's leg. 30's new 40, 40's a new 50, new toy, retail therapy. All roads point to McSweeney in that case. I think it's an understandable selection in that context, that specific context I've just given. Yourself.
I thought Warner should be back.
Yeah, well, I mean, Warner's coming up great, isn't he?
I think that I said this the other day, like Constas, McSweeney, Harris, Bancroft, throw a blanket over him. You know,
Why?
a space blanket, I mean, because they're shivering, because they're fucking freezing from the cold runs they've been on.
This is no heat.
I think like what it comes down to, like everyone seems to have like, well, it's very obvious what needs to happen, and like there's just there's
it's like the US election.
What's more obvious is the argument against picking every single one of those guys. That's more obvious. So like, I really feel for Bancroft, who he just needed to not score 29 runs in 8 digs. I feel like he had the best opportunity to just do enough to be like, okay, he's got to have a crack. But
I feel like he did until Warner started picking apart his technique. David Warner's former
like a
international
vulture on
teammate.
a carcass.
Yeah, and his current captain at the Thunder. So,
well, they've got a bit of history, those two, don't they?
What?
We'll laugh about it one day. You know, I feel he's had a couple of rough decisions as well. You know, it's obviously hard to bat, et cetera, et cetera. You know, but I feel really bad for him. And then like Marcus Harris, to me, you know, was like probably the least inspired selection. You know, like he suffers from scoring his runs at where he plays his cricket. You know, that being the Junction Oval. Then when he scores his runs away from there ain't that many runs. It's fairly obvious that that's a weak point in his game. Then you've got Constas. Is it too soon? Then you've got McSweeney. He doesn't open. Like there's the arguments for all these players are very thin, but the arguments against all of them are quite strong. So I'm a bit like,
Warner.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I did look up, Pezza. So I did some numbers.
Nice. I love when you do numbers.
Yeah. It was
polling stuff.
I did some polling, some extra polling. So since the 2017 Ashes in Australia,
Yeah.
opening batters, both for Australia and the oppositions, have scored 900s. 900s for opening batters since the 2017 Ashes. So that'd be roughly
Both
about
countries?
Both countries. That's roughly about 120 individual innings, 900 scores.
Yep.
6 of those are from David Warner. So the other 3, LSC Cook, Joe Burns scored like 180 against Sri Lanka, and Usman scored 1 as well. Those are the other 3.
Didn't he hit 2 in a game, didn't he?
He was batting in the middle order against.
Was he? Okay.
That was he was batting
England.
5 against England when Travis
Yes.
had the old COVID there. 2 of Warner's 600s included the 335 not out against Pakistan, where he
Take that away.
disrespected Bradford.
Dis-
Yeah,
yeah.
and then the other one was the 200 against South Africa a couple of years ago. My point being, it is so hard to open the batting
It's
in
hard.
Australia, and you look at the Shield runs. You look at the Shield runs as well. It's increasingly hard to rack up those big numbers, as you rightfully saying, in 2 split seasons with a bucket on Bont's league in between. But Warner averages in that time not much more than 30 or something
No,
like that.
that's right.
So
That's right.
But even then, he scored 6 of the 900s. There's going to be an enormous David Warner size hole in the batting lineup, which we probably hadn't appreciated, given it's now becoming very obvious how hard it is to open the batting. Steve Smith obviously had a go. He made a 90 at the Gabba. People sort of forget that against an unbelievable Shamar Joseph and West Indies lineup where they won the game there last time Australia played a Test match. So it's obviously incredibly hard. So that argument actually probably goes against picking Sweeney. But overall, I'm a bit like, they're all good guys. I like the guys. Good luck to them, because it's going to be fucking hard. It's going to be so hard.
Yeah, like there's been some strident, vociferous arguments against the selection of Nathan McSweeney. He's predominantly batted 4 for South Australia, more recently 3, but mainly at 4.
Right.
And when George Bailey was announcing his selection and doing some of his own numbers, he noted that he's come in before the 10th over 20 odd times, and I think that was the words he used.
Like
I like that he did that.
Yeah. Always round up.
If you sign up to Cricket Hotel, you can see that Gideon then delved into those numbers of the times he did come in before the 10th over. And the scores themselves ain't particularly pretty. 22, 32, 10, 0, 12, 48, 36, 15, 20, 25, 11, 0, 7, 0. Now, Cummins and co, he goes, have basically said that like openers... I haven't said this in like specific words, but like openers are basically just frustrated middle order batters who can't get a gig in their preferred position. Right now opening the batting is the beta position in the top order.
Totally.
Right? Or in the batting group.
Yep.
And you got to remember, this is a batting group decision for McSweeney. This is about transitioning to the next generation, all that sort of stuff. But because of this, inference or implication from Cummins and McDonald and stuff, best 6 bats, just, whoever has the least amount of social capital in the team will open the batting.
Yep.
Plus Usman.
It's a new bat pad.
That's what I was going to say. Specialist opening batters across the nation are aghast and insulted. They just are.
Yeah.
And Cummins doesn't give a fuck.
That's their right.
That's their right. But yeah, basically opening the batting is the equivalent of fielding under the lid now. Right. And like, how else are we to conclude but the worst batters in the batting group go there and you hope you can get out. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, out of that position.
Out of that position, yeah.
McSweeney's a sea turtle. He goes?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
McSweeney's a sea turtle. He's hatched from his eggs.
Yep.
Birds, crabs, and animals will prey on him.
Yep.
That's boomerang, etc.
Got it.
Can he make it to water? Now, as you know, only 1 in 1,000 sea turtles make it to
1 in
water
1,000.
once you that egg's cracked open.
Famously.
The survival rate is low. Now, it's true. Like, if you look at the last few batters to bat for Australia, yes, Head, Marnus, and Mitch Marsh, they made it to water. Okay? None of them had to open. But then you look at the other batters who've had a crack for Australia in the last little while. Harris, Renshaw, Cam Bancroft, Will Bukowski, Curtis Patterson, Aaron Finch, Hilton Cartwright, Nick Maddinson. That's from Gideon's article, by the way, crickethotel.com. They didn't make it. So you normally don't make it.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be fucking hard for McSweeney. And I think that's the argument of a lot of opening bats is like, not only is it hard to make it out and solidify yourself in the Australian team, you're also playing in a context and an environment where it's hard to bat right now. There's more grass on the decks. They're built for the fast bowling cartel. You're trying to juggle 3 formats. You're playing 2 half seasons of Shield cricket before bucket on Bonds League. 50 as the average in Shield is dead. And McSweeney has batted mainly 4. Now they're like open the batting against Bumrah, which is a position that Steve Smith, who averages 60, didn't want.
Yeah.
And go well. And average 50, by the way.
Just get forward.
Yeah, and just get... Yeah, that's right. And just sort of wear them out a little bit, so get him into his 3rd and 4th spell.
Just know where your fucking off stump is, okay? It's not that hard.
So, like...
Doesn't move.
Baptism of fire for Nathan McSweeney. But... And this is... I want to ask you as well, like... I think you've answered the question. Like, do you think Harrison Bancroft is stiff? Do you think they're rigor mortis level stiff?
No.
Because I think the people who are advocates for Harrison Bancroft and going down that path,
and they do a fine job.
I think they fail to deal with, like, that they can very easily highlight why McSweeney is not the right guy. And I want to say this, like, saying that McSweeney is going to struggle is one of the great investments. For, like, as a pundit right now, if you want to jump on right now and go, this McSweeney thing's not going to work, that's a fucking great investment because of the reasons we've just said. But please deal with the alternatives if you're going to do that, because the alternatives that have been thrown up, and this is a brutal side of cricket, have not shown them, they've not got the sledgehammer out.
No.
You know, and the selectors have decided this happens brutally at the test level. The guys just haven't quite got what the selectors want, right?
Yep.
That they, you know, if you're going to come in as a 32-year-old or, 30 to 32-year-old, you've got to be ready to go now. Now, David Warner's pointed out why Cam Bancroft can't do that. He's stunted teammate.
Yeah.
And I think the selectors have probably just said with Harry, like, sorry, we just don't think it's quite there. So all things considered, let's get the next guy in and let's see if we can back him,
I think that is what has happened, and it's difficult... No, it's actually easy and fun to argue against it because all the arguments are there right in front of you.
There are going to be people in the 2nd and 3rd test go, told you. And they won't and they won't have the issue of being like, I wonder how your bloke would have gone. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, you don't have to deal with that.
You don't have to deal with that. It's like, oh, man, I told you couldn't. I'm like, what opening batter's going to succeed this summer?
Well, yeah, and what would be... Because also, like, if Cameron Green was fit, someone else is opening. Yeah. Like, Steve Smith didn't want to do it, and the team didn't want him to do it, apparently.
Como is just so kissed on the dick with this stuff.
Is it Green opening the batting then? I mean, all sorts of permutations make the imagination run free and wild, like a horse. Yeah. So, like, I reckon success... Yeah, let's say success. Let's say McSweeney plays all 5 test matches and he scores 250 runs.
What are you
in the series.
taking now?
That's success. If like
averaging 25, so 10 innings, 250 runs.
I reckon that.
You're taking them. How many 250s?
Yeah, 250s. Yeah.
A lot of the analysis of the series, which because this has been the analysis, it means it will be wrong. Yes. Is that like because of the way the Australian decks have been? Because you're talking Perth where it's flying. You know, to see the ODI series just before.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when the Pakistanis are bowling.
Yeah.
Perth into a day-night Adelaide test into Brisbane.
Yeah, all the best.
Sorry,
into Melbourne.
Into the MCG. Yeah.
Flattens out Sydney.
Yeah, flattens out Sydney.
You sort of cash in there.
Let's hope it's done by then.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. So a lot of the analysis has been that the extent to which the top order can get miles into the quick bowlers' legs and allow the middle to lower order to score runs is going to be the difference. You know, that you're talking about your Head, Marsh, Carey axis versus what, Punt, Dhruv Jurel or Sarfraz and Jadeja and Ashwin and those guys.
I mean, that's where series have been won for Australia recently. Look at the player of the series. Head's been, Marsh has been. Yeah. Marsh had a good summer last year, a couple of 90s. And then, like, you intersperse David Warner's hundreds over the last sort of 7 years. That's going to be a huge miss. My point made before. But one thing I think is a risk with McSweeney, sorry, there are many risks, but here's one thing, is that like he is earmarked for the next sort of next generation to come through. He's 25, he's the right age. It can, if this doesn't, almost guaranteed when it doesn't work out.
It depends on what workout means.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because it's hard for him because we expect 50, an average of 50.
Which is just unrealistic for anyone. Hundreds. So that could set him back sort of 3 or 4 years, which has happened to many other good players before as well. They have to go back and then, start again, and hopefully he gets into a position where he actually wants to bat and someone else has to open the batting. But I think that is a risk. But there are risks with all of them. Like,
what's the alternative?
Could you of anyone of the guys that they were looking at, like, who's going to score 500 runs in the series? I mean, like, maybe. I don't know, but it's just not that obvious.
Well, once the series starts, I'll expect a lot of it, at least 3 of our guys to do that. But I take your point. Look, to be serious, there've been some indications, spoken to people at Cricket Australia in the last week or so, that they are mindful of bringing the next guys through. And I think in the absence of like a seasoned pro who was ready to go now, that they trusted to come in and do a job, which they clearly, they don't. I think they're mindful to get McSweeney in because they see him as a guy who can play long term. As you say, I mean, if Bumrah takes him apart or Siraj or whoever else they're going to play, then that's the risk you run, as has already been stated. He's a sea turtle. Not everybody makes it, but they've earmarked him. They think he might. It's a new toy for everybody. So on balance, they've selected him. It's imperfect. I actually do think that it's an aggressive, optimistic selection in that context. I think the conservative approach would have been to go with the battered Holden and to see what they could do.
Yeah,
but and now you see the narratives about McSweeney emerging, which we like. I mean, it's not quite Mediterranean flowing hair Constas stuff.
No.
Constas is now being, I see, he's been kind of, what's the word? He's being spun as a Cricket Central Silverwater jail merchant only. He just gets his runs there, like Harry gets them at Junction. He's a Cricket Central merchant. Like he's played 7 games, so let's give him a chance.
Yeah.
But I noticed with McSweeney, it's like the narrative is in full swing. We're talking like, his friendship with Marnus. He makes the same shapes. Marnus has been a mentor of his. So that's meant to make us feel safe. I'm not sure if it does. Beautiful story with his granddad. His granddad sees every ball, asks him to sit down. I'm playing for Australia, and his granddad says, "I better save my pennies." And McSweeney's like, "Think I can look after your granddad?" Like, granddad stuff, that's good.
Yes.
Stories about McSweeney facing the cartel when he was 19 and coming through okay. Sort of stories you used to hear about Cummins, you know what I mean? Or I did also hear that about Jason Frazier with Ricky Ponting, and he got a gig, but come to think of it, lots of reasons why I'd bring Frazier on tour.
I do like the idea of McSweeney, leaning against some sort of glass architecture in a polo.
Yes.
And being like, what? I wonder what his story is.
Exactly. And now the 9 entertainment papers are saying that he could be Cummins' successor.
Yes.
Let him play a game.
Yeah.
I would have thought, personally, but apparently he's earmarked.
When Inglis opens the batting, that's going to be quite a surprise for all of us, but I'm into it.
So I think that it is... it's an exciting selection. And this matters, think that they are overdue to start bringing people through for when half the team might retire or get retired.
I understand all of the arguments for all the players that people that listen to this, they would have preferred someone else. So they're perfectly valid arguments. I can get all of it. I do think that McSweeney probably is the most optimistic is the right word. Constance would be aspirational, I suppose, but almost... Just not quite ready yet. Obviously, just yet, despite getting some blessing from the likes of Ponting before it was retracted.
Oh yeah, I saw another one with McSweeney as well. Like he had a Ricky Ponting ODI jersey when he was 12 or some shit like that, or 7 or 8, and like he just wore it for 7 years or something. So like he loves punter. Punter's his guy as well.
That's good.
So a lover of Australian cricket in a nerdy poster on wall way. Just kind of, this is the sort of narratives we need. When you've got Hindi on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, which, by the way, is the correct thing to do, we need some of these narratives. We need Merv saving Ian Botham from crocodiles.
Yes.
We need Nathan McSweeney in a Ponting jersey. Now, I thought, McSweeney would have been disappointed when... he didn't quite get a papal blessing from Ponting. I think Ponting was like, I did say Constas, but I guess McSweeney.
Yeah. I've heard things have changed now. I'm sort of,
But we're hearing, I heard Finchy this morning saying, on a Willow Talk podcast, saying he's got the game. He's got the game. He's got the technique. He's organised. He's like, he's got the game, doesn't he? Great. That's good. So, I just think new toy, retail therapy, let's go.
I reckon there's a good chance Usman makes him face first ball as well. Just proper deep end stuff.
That's definite, isn't it? Isn't that how that... Does Usman do the first ball? I mean,
maybe he doesn't.
The entire... And McSweeney faced the first ball when he was opening for Australia as well, both innings. But the entire story out of this is you're an idiot to open the batting, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do it. Not even players in the Australian team want to do it.
Yeah.
Martens is like, get out of here. You can do it.
If Bancroft had like a Hussey ODI jersey that he wore when he was like 26, then he'd never play again. So 12 is the right age to have someone's jersey to wear for a while. That was my sort of takeaway from that.
Also, you know who's good at adapting to opening the batting? Shane Watson. Anyway, just saying.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to go into the other side of the fence there with Gambhir's press conference? You want to talk about some Indian stuff now?
Certainly do.
So Gambhir got a little fire in the press conference when he was asked about Ricky Ponting's comments and inference that Rohit and Virat especially were past their best. Here's a clip of Ricky talking to actually our friend Sanjana.
Here's the clip itself.
Yeah, from the ICC website. We're going to get banned from this probably, but have a look at this, Charlie.
With such a pivotal series on the line, where do you think Rohit and Virat Kohli are with their form and their careers?
I saw a stat the other day that I think it might have been Sanjay Manjrekar or someone brought up about Virat, said he's only scored 2 Test hundreds in the last 5 years. That didn't seem right to me, but if that is right, then that's a concern. There wouldn't be anyone else probably even playing international cricket as a top order batsman that's only scored 2 Test match hundreds in 5 years. So, but as I said, and I've said it before about Virat, you don't ever question the greats of the game. No. There's no doubt he's the great of the game. I think he loves playing against Australia. In fact, I know he loves playing against Australia. And as I said, his record here is very good. So if there's probably a time for him to turn it around, it'd be this series, you know, and maybe early on when Rohit's not there, a bit like we're just talking about with Bumrah, when these other senior guys aren't there, it's more of a chance for you to step up and make your mark on a series. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Virat make runs in the first game.
Oh, a masterclass there from Ponting.
That was an absolute masterclass.
So then obviously Gambhir was asked about this, Gambhir being the current Indian coach, of course. He says, what does Ponting have to do with Indian cricket? I think he should talk about Australian cricket. More importantly, I have no concerns whatsoever for Virat and Rohit. So, you know, Ponting said, you know, I'm backing him.
Well, yeah, as far as I could see there, Ponting questioned him and then said, but you don't question greats. Unless you're a great.
And that's why that's why he's the best.
And that's why he's the best.
Yeah.
And what does Ponting have to do with Indian cricket? I mean, heaps.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked for the job that Gambhir's currently got, I think, beforehand. But
is that good from punter as well? That's a bit of stoke. Like, that's a bit of welcome to Australia stuff as well. It's like 2 tons in 5 years. What are we looking at?
I mean, he is right. But Sanjay Manjrekar is correct, in fact, that it is 2 Test hundreds for Virat Kohli in the last 5 years since 2019.
Everyone's doing a job here as well, by the way. Sorry, he goes. Just pick this up. So Sanjana Ganesan is asking that question to punter, part of the ICC review show, and it's a completely fair and valid question. But she's also married to the guy who has designs on the captaincy. Yeah.
Well, he will be the captain for the first test.
That's right. Well, so that's not sorted out yet. No, it's not. Rohit, right? So the deal with Rohit is that he may be missing one of the first 2 tests due to the impending birth of his second child. He will not be flying out with the Indian team, but may still make it for the first test. So it seems to be there's no need to read between the lines there, but Gambhir has said that if Rohit cannot play one of those tests, Jasprit will captain.
Right. And KL Rahul is likely to open, he said. Anyway, Sanjay Manjrekar took to X.
Wow.
I'm not calling it X, Twitter.
Yeah.
And he said this, just watch Gambhir in the press conference. Maybe wise for @BCCI to keep him away from such duties. Let him work behind the scenes. He does not have the right demeanour nor the words when interacting with them. Rohit and Agarkar, much better guys to front up for the media. So, you know.
A bit of pressure.
1-0 Australia, I say.
Yeah, that's right. Sanjay's telling him to behave. Not the first time he's done that. He did Gambhir did also say that Ishwaran or Shubman could open the batting as well. So, you know, here we are.
They've got options.
Aghast at this selection of the opening batter, but India can't figure theirs out either. Yeah. To be fair, but they do have options.
So well played, everyone involved there. Everyone got a touch. Everyone did well.
Exactly, and that's what we want. Yeah. You know, and I think that Gambhir's press conferences will be good.
In lieu of any cricket being played,
yeah,
I think this is brilliant.
Exactly. So just on the series, I mean, is it going to be won by batters whose eyes are painted on least? You know, because we're worried about Australia's ageing team, the impending cliff. But
yes.
India, Kohli 36, Jadeja turning 36, Rohit 37, Ashwin, I guess to a lesser extent with the blade 38. Mm-hmm. You know, there's some grey hairs there too, some grey beards.
Would you say, and it's either yes or no?
Thanks, I need that.
That Rishabh Pant is the best middle order batter in the world at the moment?
I can't think of a batter right now.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I wouldn't know.
But he is good, isn't he?
He's very good. I think he's the key wicket.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, we just spoke before about how important the middle order runs have been for Australia. Therefore, because we've been talking about it, that means it's true. But you look at what Rishabh Pant almost did in that third test match against New Zealand, almost got them over the line when no one else has been scoring runs. Yeah. He creates the energy, that electricity. He can take the game away from you. He scores in unusual areas off balls that have no right to end up where he puts them.
Yep.
He's done it in Australia. It's I think in many ways, actually, he's more exciting to come out here than maybe Virat's last dance in Australia. Totally. Test matches anyway, he's much more in the peak of his powers than some of the aging guys. But I think if India win games or win the series even, it seems like he'd be such a pivotal player because of what he can do and what he has done out here as well.
If he could light it up, it'd be incredible to watch. But I mean, same with Kohli and Rohit, all those guys. I mean, there's a cricketing part of all of us that's like, it'd be amazing to see them, do what they do at their best. But
Jaiswal as well.
Jaiswal, yeah. Like I feel like Pant is the key wicket in Australia because like we psychologically as a nation seem to have a kryptonite or like an Achilles heel for the player that you can't keep quiet. Like there's like we get particularly flustered when like Ben Stokes kicks off, against us. When he's on a tear.
Yeah. That's because we give it.
It's because we give it. But it's like, we can't. It's something we can't control. Right. You know what I mean? Like Pujara killed us last time, but it was killing us softly. Lauren Hill style.
It was, yeah.
And
death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah,
and a lot of leaves as well. Heaps of them. Fucking dotted us up.
But like if but when Rishabh can't be contained, we get upset as a nation. And even like Cummins is he cannot be flustered.
Mm-hmm.
But the cumulative effect of the rest of the country getting upset that someone's taking us apart on home soil can just like kill and destroy plans. Totally. So I do think Rishabh's the wicket.
Anything else for the series, or do you want to talk about what's this? Australia, Pakistan, ODIs. Okay, not sure about those, but
I don't know what this is, but happy to talk about it. I don't know.
Mate, you. How many people in your life knew that the first game was on? Because I genuinely
did a survey monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, 0. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's neither here nor there, really.
Well, Dizzy made this point. Did you see that this
No.
morning? Oh, he said as Pakistan coach, he goes, it feels like Cricket Australia haven't promoted this at all.
Yeah.
And that clearly they're focused on the BGT, which is great double agent work from Dizzy just to give us an excuse for losing as an Australian.
Well, in many ways, I feel like we won the series because of Jason Gillespie. Anyway, Pakistan won the series 2-1. It's their first. It's Australia's first ODI series loss at home in 5 years. Pakistan's first series win in Oz since 2002. Huge turnaround for Pakistan in the series, of course, after beating England at home in the test, after losing that first test. Historic home test win for the first time in so long. Now an away series win for the ODI side. You look at the side, actually, Pez, that won in Australia in 2002. That's like one of the great Pakistan teams of all time. They had like Saeed Anwar, Shahid Afridi, Waqar, Wasim. Like it was a great side, and this side is this Pakistan side has done the same thing 22 years later. 26 wickets by Pakistan seamers in the series out of the 28 that they took. They almost won the first game if it wasn't for Captain Cummins doing his thing again with the blade at the MCG there. No Australian player scored a 50 in the series.
Run crisis.
So maybe two things can be true. Pakistan, their seamers especially, unbelievable, excellent exhibition of pace and control. Australia were without Marsh, Head, Cummins, Hazelwood for some or all of the games. 5 changes for the final game, the decider there at Perth. Once again, Perth feels like they've been stitched up. Wow. Do we care? Are ODIs a priority? How do the broadcasters feel about them rolling out a B-side? I wonder. Well, the broadcaster being Fox, that's when it's put on. But they don't feel great.
There have been some media reactions. I mean, I can only. My favourite headlines was I saw this in the SMH the other day. Why Cummins was at Coldplay while Australia was smashed.
That's great.
Which I think is that's just once again Cummins living the dream. Like, who among us wouldn't prefer to go to a gig than babysit the twos?
Yeah,
So play on. I like Crick Info's one when Pakistan turned the land down under into upside down land.
That's
working.
Yeah,
Hey,
winner gets the spoils.
Oh, look, I mean, CB, I think we've got this here. I mean, I've got a pretty simple response from me.
We'd have to give him the hog pile. If you keep that shit up, we're going to squash the guts out your ass.
There is that, but also the other one, more specific.
Just fucking bat properly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Totally right.
pretty simple. I mean, it's the ODI contractual obligation series.
Yep.
3 out of 11 World Cup winners inside, and there was a lot of criticism about the team that they rolled out for Perth, but I thought that it was genius from Cricket Australia because, for a long time, Perth people have made it very clear that they'll get behind WA players.
Yes.
And they basically played the WA team, like in the absence of the real team. They had Inglis captaining,
Right.
Hardy, Stoinis, Bareback Morris,
Yep.
Cooper Connolly.
Connolly.
So we gave them what they wanted. Still couldn't get the job done. So, but at least we've done this experiment now of playing the WA team.
In front of the home fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People will say this doesn't matter because Australia wasn't at full strength. And once again, I think that points to crisis. I mean, hello, Australia, eh? Anybody? Like the whole point of an Australian summer is that hapless opposition turn up and even our twos can knock them over.
Yes, that's
if
right.
you're going to play it in like mid-November, when the sun's starting, to represent summer in the hearts and minds of Australians, then our twos and our threes and our fours should be knocking over full strength opposition.
Yeah.
Right, and then we've been done by pace. The opposition's bowling quicker than us.
Yeah.
And they're going through the chest, and we're not.
It was an Asian side coming to our shores and getting us through the chest.
They've chested us. An Asian side have chested us.
I thought a hapless Asian team was going to just come over here and bend over.
Mate, when I was at the MCG on Monday,
What for?
It was part of a honey trap.
Victoria having a net session.
And I thought that the consensus in the press box, where I was briefly, is, like Cummins bowled one at, this new debutante's neck. Forget his name, and that's my right.
Yes.
And got a wicket. And, everyone just chortled going, mate, you're not in Multan anymore. In unison.
Yeah.
And, neck minute, the entire Australian team dismissed, losing by 9 wickets and 8 wickets respectively in the following games.
Well, I thought they were good tosses to win.
Shout out to the Pavilion boys. They were on.
Oh, the boys were
are
on.
on. You got to shout it out.
Yeah, the boys were
that was
on.
good. I thought that I'm going sort of in circles here, but like in the game that the Pakistanis almost won in Melbourne, where 27,000 people came and 25,000 of them were Pakistanis. When Harris Rauf was on his tear,
Yes.
With 4 wickets in quick succession, it elicited the shaky camera vibe.
Love that.
And the shaky camera, you live for the shaky camera.
Big time.
So shouting that out. Other comments, I enjoyed in the pre-series promotion, Muhammad Rizwan standing next to Pat Cummins and putting his hand on Cummins' hand. Who among us wouldn't do that?
For power play.
That was nice. Other things I noted was Steve Smith on SEN after making 40-odd, saying, I could go out and play a test match tomorrow. I feel like I'm in a good place. I've just been trying to get a few things right that I didn't have in sync, and it all just clicked.
Great.
So once again,
Great news.
I think for the 5th year in a row, things weren't good for Smith, and now the mechanics are back. There was a dislocation.
Yes.
And then someone's clicked it back in.
He's figured it out.
He's figured it out. I don't know if it was hands or body.
Well, I feel like he's been playing a lot of golf recently, and many people who are just amateur hackers around a course, you'll have one good round and you think, I've figured it out. He does that every summer, but maybe this year is the year that he's figured it out, because he has figured it out before.
He figures it out every year. It appears, over the last couple of years. So we never seem to figure out when he loses it. It's just that it's assumed that he's lost it by the start of the summer, but then something happens and they ask him about it and he's like, I've got it back now. So he made 40 and 30 or something.
He does the right thing by losing it away from our eyes when the footy's on and that, which is kind of my point when I feel about this series generally, Pezza, because there's been some discussion, some opining about, there's 10 days between that game and the first test match, the players being rested, 5 changes for that last game. And so then it sort of gets in the conversation, what's more important? Now, obviously, this is a huge preparation for the Champions Trophy
Oh, man, the big one.
The big one.
We've always loved the Champions Trophy.
The big one.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking was, just in the context of what the last 12 months has been for Australian cricket and Australian cricket fans, right? Now, if you are able to get, watch it on Fox and watch it on Amazon, you've been able to watch the Australian cricket team. But a lot of people haven't been able to do that or don't care to want to do that, right? So the team has felt more hidden, I feel like, in this year than in the last, handful of years that I can think of anyway. So there's been no cricket on free-to-air television since January 28th. That was the last day of the Brisbane Test match when Shamar Joseph knocked over Hazelwood there. And then since then, cricket has happened, but just away from the eyes. And then they feels like they're playing so much cricket. They can't play every game. But then when it feels like when they're in Australia, you just want to be able to see your guys. And we've had such a great generation of winning things in the last couple of years where you feel like, you have a big game there at Optus Stadium in Perth. Just feels like the fans of Australian cricket should be able to see the best players. Yeah, okay, the Perth fans, the West Australian fans, got to see some local boys playing, but I bet they prefer to see like a full strength lineup in a great game of cricket instead of us getting fucking rolled over by a great seam attack. But just some fight. I mean, that was it wasn't quite galling because I don't think we were really that invested in the format, which I think is probably the right thing to do because we've already won the last World Cup ever. But I feel like just as a fan, if I turned up and I paid my money to go and watch the Australian team and I'm getting like a B-side, and it's a B-side, when the guys play so much cricket, but then they come on our shores and you don't get to see them. It's like, I just feel unders. Maybe it's not the players' fault. It's a scheduling thing. It's a loads thing. These conversations would have happened for months in advance before, like Cummins didn't just decide he'd just pick up some Coldplay tickets and fuck off the third game. But I don't know. I just feel like they only play in Australia for a very small amount of time. Just want to see them play here. I don't really care if they're not playing in America,
Yeah. I just think it's funny because there's a contradiction between the fact that they rested a lot of the best players because they are managing their workload ahead of their priority, which is the Test series, but
right.
and which kind of implies that there's too much cricket. They can't fit it all in. But to your point, they haven't really been playing a lot of cricket either in the Australian team. So there's two things that are kind of at odds with each other. I can only guess that like these are further signals of the care with which, or the priorities or lack of priority of ODI cricket in Australia, and perhaps more broadly as well. I mean, right now India has sent a B and a C team to South Africa to play T20 cricket.
Yep.
England have done the same thing before. It's kind of, this is the new world that we seem to be operating in.
Yeah.
Where like when you've concentrated a couple of formats in this, around the same time, Test cricket still probably wins out, for most of them for now.
Yep.
But I do think the macro question is about the viability of one-day cricket generally when seen in the context of like domestic franchise T20 cricket, T20I cricket, ODI cricket, state cricket, preparing for Test cricket, right? And Cricket Australia clearly are like, they want to win the trophies of ODI cricket, and that's about it, right? They might give the Champions Trophy a shake. The World Cup matters. Nothing else does for one-day cricket. As I said, they should hide those times when it's not in the summer. Yeah. But I think that's pretty much why it's gone down that path.
Yeah, I feel as well, mate. Like that. If I had my perfect summer this year, if you don't have all the other context of what's going on, I'd have like the Big Bash would probably be on right now, and all the Aussie players would be playing in it. Yeah. And now the Women's Big Bash is on, right? So there is cricket to be able to watch. But like, just think about like right now, the Big Bash could be going on for like a month before the Test season starts. Or maybe the Test season starts later in my ideal fantasy world that I have sometimes when I'm alone. And I'm just thinking like, then you could elongate the period of great cricket on television available for people, or in cities or at grounds that everyone could experience, right? But instead, the cricket summer in Australia, acknowledging that there's Women's Ashes in January and the Women's Big Bash on right now, but for most people, the men's cricket summer goes for 6 weeks, the 5 Test matches, that's it. The Big Bash is on at the same time. There's almost too much cricket. I find anyway, I've said this before, that like, by the time I watch a full day of Test cricket, I'm almost kind of like, I've had enough cricket for one day. I find it hard sometimes to get up for Renegades and Heat following a day of Test cricket. But, I feel like Australia, this is part of Australia losing control of their summer because of the macro factors in global cricket, where this is just the window that we have, but it's a tiny, tiny window of interest.
A shrinking window where we try and squeeze everything in.
And we don't get the best windows anymore.
Yeah.
You know, we're just waiting for the Indians to come out here now. A couple of weeks ago, we're the only country that wasn't playing cricket. Everyone else is playing cricket. But it's in our summer, you know.
Well, do you agree with Heelzo then?
Yes, I do.
Heelzo, after the first game, said we should be playing these games properly. What was that one again, Charlie?
We'd have to give him the hog pile. If you keep that shit up, we're going to squash your guts out.
Just fucking bat properly.
So playing the games properly as opposed to bat properly.
I see, yeah.
He said, but they're treating it like a schoolyard. Matt Short and Jake Fraser-McGurk were playing like schoolyard bullies. And
what
then
about the perils of sweeping?
Well, but after the Game 3 loss, he says, my initial Game 1 critique fell on deaf ears. You know, the players were not listening to Heelzo and SEN Queensland. And he said, and rookies were not only okay to express opinions that were wrong, but encouraged to keep going with tactics that have never worked in Australia.
I think that he was a wonderful wicketkeeper. He was so good with the gloves. It was neat. He caught it on the inside hip. It was the right kind of affect through the stump mic. It was a great support for the king, you know?
I have heard it suggested very sympathetically to the Australian team that perhaps they were attempting to employ a brand of cricket that they want to play in the Champions Trophy, albeit in conditions that are like almost polar opposite.
Foxing.
But like they want to play a brand that's like go out and hit 400. You know, this is why like in the last game, you know, Stoinis opened the bowling and then, you know, Bareback Morris came in, which was a nice shape to consider.
Yeah.
Like he had good wheels. I saw a 4 after the 1.
He's hot.
He's kind of hot as well.
Yeah.
But ultimately for me, like I still expect twos to win.
Yeah.
He goes, and like I like new toys, you know, but if we're gonna hide white ball mediocrity, like hide it away from the summer, like you usually do.
Yeah.
Cricket Australia, get it behind the right paywall at the right time and in the right country. Don't do it when summer's peeking around the corner here in Australia. That fucks with.
Play the games in the morning, and I mean like 4 a.m.
Yeah, just do it when I'm not sort of in semi-cricket mode for 4 weeks.
Yep.
Okay, that's not the time for Australian mediocrity. Hide it elsewhere. Okay. I think we're starting to have a look at an Australian summer.
I thought the Wallabies played well.
Well, Wallabies played very, very well.
And the netball dancing?
T20s are coming up as well, by the way. He goes, I don't know if you had that, but a couple of my points on the T20 series coming up is Dan Cherney and the News Corp papers. He's putting in a great body of work, Cherney, by the way.
He's good, Cherney.
I want to get him on. Yeah.
Yep.
He's saying Dan Christian's weighing a comeback to BBL, as he should, because he made 130. Well, actually, what Cherney said...
Yeah.
Was that so? Cherney cited Christo's 19 sixes from 43 balls at the Hong Kong Sixers event recently.
Okay.
What he didn't cite, and fair enough because he wrote it before this happened.
We can break it here though.
Dan Christian made 130 from 164 rocks for Uni New South Wales against Sam Constance's Sutherland. Constance wasn't playing.
Yes.
In first grade on the weekend.
In Sydney Test cricket.
Mm-hmm. Now that's, you know.
Did he open the batting?
He didn't, but that doesn't mean you can't open at the top level.
At the top level, that's true, yeah.
You know, is that meant to make us feel safe that 41-year-old Dan Christian's going back to ones and strumming 130 off the cock?
Well, we've seen Jimmy Anderson put his name in the hat, his name in the ring for IPL.
Do people have
Christo's doing the business at fucking test level.
It makes me personally feel safe because he was of our generation.
Yeah.
So you sort of own it. You're like, oh, so he's gone back. He's gone back to grade cricket. Grade cricket's fucking shit now.
It's
Look at him. Christo just rocks, you know.
Oh, do you remember how good it was when we
Fresh
played?
from 19 sixes from 43 rocks at the Hong Kong Sixers event.
HK Sixers.
Yeah.
Big grounds over there.
Strums 130 off the old Morton stock there, and now he's in talks to re-enter the BBL, which is gonna be awkward because he's got a gig coaching at the Thunder. But you know,
player coach, captain coach. We've seen it before.
Warner, Bancroft, it's all happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I'm just saying, so the T20 series is coming up. Maybe have a look at Christo.
Dipsy's head.
Dipsy's head.
Anyway, so that's all to play for, but the real cricket will start soon, and the real cricket starts when we win a game. A game that we care about at the right time with the right players playing in front of the right people.
Right people, right time.
Yep,
right channel.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everything. And we'll be performing, Pezza, in front of the right people for our live shows this summer. The summer tour dates of 24-25. Hey, Adelaide is now sold out. So if you want to come to Adelaide, you can't. But tickets are available for Perth, Wednesday, 4th December at the Astor Theatre. Special guest Marcus Stoinis and Ashton Agar, a couple of Australian representatives themselves.
Yeah, very hot.
That is going to be a hot night. Tickets available at greycricketer.com. A few tickets available still for the Tivoli Theatre in Brisbane. That's Wednesday, 18th December. That's 1 week before Christmas Day, Pezza. You want to get around that. People knocking off work, a couple of drinks on a Wednesday. You're basically dialing in at work anyway. Come along and see Matthew Hayden on stage.
Who's the guest? Dos.
TGC with Dos.
So Dos and his Pink Cooper on stage, day 5, Australia, India.
That's right, Pezza. That's
Crikey,
right.
Moses.
Hey, you want to get into the new year? Thursday, 2nd of Jan, Enmore Theatre, Sydney. Special guest, Gambhir's mate, RT Ponting. And he'll have some thoughts. Now, Pezza, I think, I don't have the number in front of me. I think there's about 120 tickets left for the Enmore. So that is going to go real quick. I think I said last week it's going to go in a week. I was wrong. But
how about the
it is going to sell out very quickly.
When we performed at the Corner down here in Melbourne, so Sydney hasn't seen TGC X RT Ponting.
No.
Right? But when
London
we performed
has.
At the Corner,
Melbourne
has. They let extra people in for standing room only, and you could. It was almost like it was so that the atmosphere was so febrile upon Ponting entering the stage, having removed only his 7 pin.
Such was the fever in the room that he was like, this is not right to be representing this organisation.
There was steam and smoke rising, at least from my memory.
That was vape.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, there's new regulations around that, but. Like the reception he got as he walked on stage was febrile.
Yes,
and
it was.
I can only think at the famous Enmore Theatre, that's a capacity of 1,650. There's 100 tickets left.
Yes.
The atmosphere when we brought Kadich on stage.
Yeah.
We'd reminded people of a few incidents involving Simon Kadich.
Some of the highlights of his career.
Yeah, that's right. The roar he got was magnificent. If you want to be part of that roar when RT Ponting comes on stage.
Yeah.
GreatCricketer.com.
There's only 100, I think it's 120 tickets left for that, so that is going to sell out real quick. So if you want to get in, this is your notice, get in. Now, our first night in Melbourne on Wednesday, Jan 8 with specialist Aaron Finch in Melbourne, that is already sold out. You can't come to that show. But there is a second show in Melbourne, the next night, Thursday, 9th of Jan, Forum Theatre, special guest Peter Siddle will be joining us on stage, and that's going to wrap up the tour. So that is going to be, look, all those shows are going to be fantastic. So, first night, Melbourne sold out. Adelaide sold out. Tickets left for Perth, Brisbane, Sydney, and the second Melbourne show. All tickets at greycricketer.com. You want to be there. You want to get around it. You want to be there with the boys. You want to feel something. You want to sink your teeth into the summer. Now, we're going to speak to our colleagues and our friends, Pete Lalor and Gideon Haigh. And this interview is brought to you by Ponting Wines. You can go to pontingwines.com.au. And I'm actually on the...
You're on the website
on the website right now.
Are you just staring at Punter facing up to his son?
Oh, I'm actually in the I'm actually in the collection tab of the page, and I've gone to
the products themselves.
And the first one here is Ponting's first session, Adelaide Hills Sauv Blanc 2024. And when you put your cursor on it or the mouse on it, there's an image here that flicks to Vogue, Best Father's Day 2020 gifts according to Vogue. And there's like an Omega watch. There's like a polo shirt. There's some cologne, and then there's a Ponting Wines next to some aviators.
Punter really has like leveled up in sophistication stakes.
Yeah,
I feel. I'm not saying that he was ever like among the plebs or anything like that. I think that every stage of his career, there's been a certain class and gravitas, that he's exuded. Ponting Wines brings it out. I mean, even as I look at him facing up here to his son in the backyard.
How the shapes.
His daughters are, one daughter's keeping and the other seems to be a sort of a short gully, which is exactly where you would field a punter, by the way, early on, so his daughter knows him. But just the way, like his watch is showing just so, beautiful wheels on him.
Yeah.
And
it's a manicured lawn, isn't it?
The way, just the pickup of the bat, the backlift, the angle of the face.
Can he open?
Imagine that. You'd be yes.
Who would the people want? Ricky Ponting comes out of retirement.
Yeah, the wisdom of the masses. If you just put it on, you've just put a poll out there.
Do you know what I want? I want Dos. I know we're getting one Queenslander / Saka in the side, and I'm into that. But like, if we just got the big, burly chest with the Pinker Cooper of Matthew Hayden walking at Bumrah for the first pill, doesn't matter if he can't see it anymore. I'd be into that. Now, I know this is about Ponting, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Can we get some big
talking
chest?
dead or alive, who would you like to be walking to the crease? Yeah. I mean, it's Bradman for me because it would answer a lot of questions. Alive, Bradman, that is. He's alive.
It would.
It would answer a lot of questions about who's good.
That's another Saka on the side.
That's right.
Because he lived there for a bit.
Indeed.
Having a good run, the Sackers.
They got the next test skipper.
And the Queenslanders. Pontingwines.com.au for the very best in everything. For the very best in everything. That's not a tag. I just made that up. Can you tell? Here's Pete and Gideon.
Well, rather than use my own words to introduce these two luminaries, I'll use theirs. This is their respective bios. Peter Lalor has been writing and commentating on cricket forever, with Channel 7, SEN, Offsiders, and for 20-odd years as the chief cricket correspondent for The Australian. Brackets, 2004 to 2024, close brackets. Gideon Haigh has published more than 50 books and contributed to more than 100 newspapers and magazines in a decades-long journalism career. His books include The Cricket War, The Summer Game, and On Warn. And he's written on subjects from abortion, asbestos and architecture to incest and Herb Everett. These two guys are the chief written contributors to a brand new independent media venture that many people listening to the show or watching the show would have heard of, called Cricket et al. TGC. We're very proud to be part of the project from the outset. The Fin Review, this establishment legacy media title, notes that Cricket et al., despite only being around for a year, has rocketed into the top 20 most subscribed to Substacks in Australia. So Gideon and Pete, welcome to the couch at this dirtbag independent media venture called The Grade Cricketer.
One dirtbag to another.
Exactly. Well, I was going to ask
You're
you.
on both sides of the dirtbag.
Exactly. As establishment legacy media, corporate media men, for decades. Yeah. What does it feel like to jump over to the Joe Rogan, Theo Von, dirtbag independent media divide with, incredible success immediately? Over 1,000 paid subscribers. People want you, How does it feel to be among the dirty people in digital media?
The unwashed.
Yeah, the great unwashed.
Well, it was funny that the legacy media didn't want us anymore. I think we'd outlived our usefulness at the Australian. I left about a year ago, and Pete followed me out the door. The legacy media that you're talking about is a pale shadow of its former self. The days when there were lots of cricket writers around, and there was guaranteed big coverage in daily newspapers. That seems a long time ago now. The Oz where we work doesn't even have a sports department anymore. It relies on group copy from the News Limited tabloids. A lot of these places are, they're Potemkin villages now. They look like newspapers, but they're really just kind of they're obscuring the general degradation of the industry.
How have you found it, Pete?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I left the Australian by choice, so they would have, to point that out, they would have kept continued with me. So and I don't want to. I feel a little bit bad, sort of. I don't want to be seen to be dumping on the legacy media because it was the best job in the world and it gave me so much opportunity, and it would have continued, but in its own sort of diminished manner, as Gideon says. I mean, there is a couple of people in the sports department, but there was once over 30. We would go on the road and there'd be five or six of us on the road covering a test match from the Australian alone. I mean, those days are well gone. I find it funny because I sort of watched you guys and, Collins and Lemon come into cricket and really admired the sort of energy and the creativity of it. And I don't know, the traditional path was always through the legacy media, the established media.
Corporate media.
Corporate media.
Corporate elites.
And that still exists and good on it. But you guys just reinvented the world to suit yourselves, and you did it really well. And suddenly we join you. But it's a funny way to join you, isn't it? Because we'd already started up. We're not doing the startup. We're so we've come in, at least we we've had jobs. We knew how to cover cricket. You guys just made it up, and geez, it's an astounding story what you guys did, and what Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon did as well. I really respect that, and yeah.
Oh, I don't really know how to deal with a compliment, but one of the...
I have to say that now, don't I? 'Cause,
You do actually, yeah, contractually.
Yeah. One of the oft-repeated pieces of analysis from the US election has been the willingness of Republicans to embrace independent media via podcasts, you know.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan got a shout-out with Trump's victory speech.
Yeah.
So did Theo Von. Whereas the Democrats hoped that, you know, the establishment corporate media would do better bidding for them. You know, like, what do you make of the establishment versus dirtbag independent press dynamic in Australian sport, right? You know, lots of pundits are starting their own podcasts, for example. You guys have a podcast as well with Cricket Hotel. A lot of people, it occurs to me, are just keener to own their own stuff and say their own pieces or their own opinions.
Well, I go back a bit further because, you know, when I started writing about cricket when I was living in England in 89, 90, and the place that I started doing it was in a fanzine called Johnny Miller 96 Not Out. That was perhaps, you know, the great cricketer of its time, you know, before we even thought of there being an alternative to media. But there has always been a kind of an undercurrent or a variety of different voices. Maybe it's just the internet has made us more aware of them, but there have always been other platforms in which to operate. And even though I've been associated with legacy media, I've not been, since 1995, a full-time employee of a newspaper. I've always been a contractor. I've gone from contract to contract to contract, and then last year I didn't renew of my own volition because I could see that this area was opening up, and it wasn't necessarily always to have the shoulders of big media to stand on, and in some ways that felt a bit retrogressive to be hanging around in that space, which wasn't really developing, it wasn't really going anywhere. And the other way in which I have worked as a cricket writer is by writing books. Now, actually, you're meant to do that at the end of your career, not the beginning, but I did it the other way around. So I've always kind of been interested in different ways to do things. It's just that now they're perhaps more obvious and they have easier ways of connecting to a public.
A lot of the new media is the old media just repackaged too, isn't it? I mean, you know, essentially because we're doing it now, you know, via a newsletter of sorts, you know, but it's electronic, and even this podcast medium is just another way of delivering words, which was, you know, used to be called radio, didn't it? Yeah. It's just a more convenient form of radio.
Everyone's still just narrating, aren't they? There's just different ways of distributing it.
And now, for some reason, we watch podcasts. So I've really can't get my head around that. Isn't that television?
This is television, Pete. There's a lot of people watching.
There's still good people out there writing good stuff, and there's still a real appetite for traditional coverage of cricket. Yeah. In fact, an enormous appetite for it, because I think that's what we do, isn't it? You know, we write those, you know, long-winded sort of chin-stroking, reflective pieces on the game, and there's a big market for that. But I suppose the market's broader now. You're probably the demographics of your audience be younger than ours, and they're more attuned to the podcast and more attuned to a TikTok or an Insta or whatever. I mean, God, you guys, you're a Twitter account. You're actually like the personification of a Twitter account. It's a really strange, the evolution of the great cricketer, isn't it?
A fake character. It was fake Nathan Horrocks and then the great cricketer. People thought it was Kerry O'Keefe.
Yeah, I missed that guy.
Okay, let's not go there.
Gideon, in a post-Trump world, 2.0, I suppose, post-truth world as well.
Golden age.
In the golden age, yeah, that's right. A man that once wore a Four Seasons Total Landscaping T-shirt on television. What can one expect from Gideon and Pete this summer? And what is the summer about?
Good question. I mean, every summer is slightly different. They're variations on similar themes. I mean, we're both kind of finding our way in writing in this new medium. Mm-hmm. It's not quite the same as writing a newspaper column.
We're making it up as we go a bit, aren't we? Yeah.
I think the voice is more discursive. It's more conversational. we don't have to worry about the Australians' comment section anymore. We've got our own comment section. They're a bit more politer and a bit more domesticated. And
For now.
Curated.
the other thing is that you, with this medium, one of the things you can take advantage of is the capacity for instant response. Like yesterday, we went to the MCG. We were present for the George Bailey presser. We immediately did a live pod on YouTube and on Spotify and on Apple in response. I've written a column about it this morning. And we're about to go to Perth. We don't have to worry about terrible Eastern States deadlines anymore. You know, the great monolith of News Limited was kind of inelastic about deadlines. You always had to file something at T and at Stumps because of the time zone. Now it's actually going to be pretty trouble free.
It's a lot more fun now. I mean, that instant response is great. You know, I mean, the old days, breaking a news story was a big task, and if you did break a story, you'd beaten everybody else for 24. The other newspapers 24 hours. Now it's 24 seconds. Right. You know, like Cherney gets the break on the team yesterday. Within 5 minutes, everyone can follow that up and has got.
We can start a Twitter account and just copy the news that you've read and just write breaking, something like that, and then you look like a newsbreaker and you're just an aggregator.
But you know, even the
as I like to do,
you know, even the opportunity to podcast or jump in front of the camera. I mean, traditionally people like us hid behind the typewriter our whole lives. I mean, there's such a thirst for content now. They have to reach so far down into the barrel that people like us end up on camera and stuff. And it's good, isn't it? It's good to be. It's great to be out of your comfort zone at this age. Yeah.
We don't.
There was a warm bath just sitting there typing up stories for 20 years at cricket games and delivering your piece on deadline and breaking your yarn. But you know, it's much more vibrant now. And I enjoy it.
Yeah, and you get a T-shirt.
Yeah,
so you guys got the whole thing going.
Gideon's voice, and mine.
Here we are, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, wearing our T-shirts. Yeah, you've got one there. You haven't put it on yet, Sam.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look good on this rig right now. But
the podcasting.
Excel.
I remember. When we walk to cricket grounds. We walk everywhere. We're on tour. You know, and we're just two cheeks of the same arse, just blah, blah, blah topics, you know, so in love with everything that we're saying to each other. One day we were at the lights at Birmingham walking down to Edgbaston, and I said, we should just fucking record this. It'd be a podcast.
Look at you guys go. We should set up a pod.
And I saw this.
Just a couple of guys at a bar.
This is absolute gold.
Gideon gave me that sneer that Gideon gives.
Curl one side of his mouth.
Not for the changing, but that's how it kind of came about too. I remember that story you told that morning. It was a fascinating story.
Did Sue tell you about her conversation with Janine on...
Now, who are they? So you've got female fans?
We hosted.
We're attractive to dinner each.
What's that like?
My partner and I hosted Pete and his wife for dinner at the weekend, and apparently they observed to each other that Gid and Pete, they just slip into their secret language. They just sort of start mumbling under their breaths to each other. It's almost like there's no one else in the room, and that's what happens when you've been on tour together for 12 years.
Yeah.
But the people who listen to this show and watch this show know that we're proud to be part of it, and so don't want it to sound too much like we're we're flogging it here, but like
I'd be much more comfortable if you guys were taking the piss out of us.
No, that'll come. Just it's okay, but like it feels weird for me too. But
shut the fuck up.
Yeah, shut up and just get in your lane. But like,
sorry.
You guys are understood by a lot of.
You told me about that, didn't you? Don't interrupt, Sam.
Yeah, exactly. Understood to be, you're a great duo. In the NBA Jam style, early '90s arcade game. But
what's he talking about?
Yeah, it's okay.
Young stuff.
You guys will be covering this summer in the way that you have before, right? You're talking about match reports on the bell. Yeah. You'll be doing your colour pieces, Gideon. You'll be potting at the end of the day, and you don't have to pay like Rupert 3 times as much to access that through Cricket Hotel, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
We'll
be on the road. We'll go to press
and that's paid for by people.
By the people.
That's cool.
And we'll write about other things too. It's cricket, but it's also et al. One of the things that we probably found a bit restrictive in newspapers was the fact that we were segregated, we were siloed to write about cricket only, and I certainly found that very frustrating. And that was a bit of a sticking point with me at the end. But now we really can go exactly where we want, whenever we want. And, the market will decide, the readership will decide what they're interested in.
It's important to show up. There's one thing, as a journo, like 97% of being a journo is showing up.
Yeah.
And I'd say 97% of journalism these days is provided by people who don't show up. Mm-hmm. It's not their fault that they're, they're basically chained to a sort of heater in the basement, responding on a laptop to feed content into websites. But you've got to get out there. You've got to know. You've got to know the people in the game. The best times are at long, boring net sessions. I mean, it'd be nothing worse than standing around a cricket net all day. I mean, who's going to do that apart from Barat? But I can put in a...
We've already sledged Barat once on this season. I'm not going again.
What's your superpower, Barat? Yeah. Hanging around at the nets.
No, we were calling... Because he did the celebrity ball at the WBBL. Do you remember? Did you see that? There was he's on Channel 7. They have a celebrity do a commemorative delivery to
like a first pitch
season, like a first pitch kind of thing.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And he came in, he bowls left-handed off the wrong foot and stumps pegs everywhere. Yeah. He middle out of the ground kind of stuff. And then I think we were describing him as greedy, very tongue in cheek. But he's such a lovely man. You have to clarify to him.
We do love him. We love him.
He does stand around the nets,
but he shows up, and he gets some stick from that. And it's very important to be on the road, to be in the bar, to be at the nets, just to be in the cafes in the morning. You pick up so much information, and not just news information, all sorts of things. Remember after the first test of the last Ashes series in England, when Warner had such a terrible...
Yep.
What are you doing? Don't touch my mic. Warner announced that he was the king of the second innings.
2019,
sitting in the bar. He'd been rock and rolled by Stuart Broad in the first innings of the first test. But Davey wasn't fast because he's king of the second innings. And it's just great little things like that. Tells you so much about Davey. Rings, goes around and around your head as Stuart Broad bowls him and bowls him and bowls him.
Yeah. You actually wrote an article, Pete, for Cricket et al. And probably the sort of thing that the site permits you to write that perhaps you couldn't at the Oz. It's called Cricket Media's Fine Balance. And you opened it with a quote, was from Michael Clarke to you. Yeah. And he says, when I'm at my lowest and someone is kicking me, I look up and it is always you. It's quite poetic from Pup there.
It was good, yeah.
But the article was about balancing relationships with players, probably in the way that you're describing there. And, to me, that's that endless tightrope. I'd love for you guys to talk about it. If you're a sycophant, and I think a lot of people who read journalists can feel sometimes, even ex-players can feel sometimes when someone is... that the author is protecting people or doing a version of public relations for somebody in a transactional nature. So if you're a sycophant for a player, you get too close to them, you'll never criticise them. But if you keep too much distance, you'll never get to know them. I mean, Pete, you've news hounded a lot, and I'm curious about you as well, Gideon, but how do you walk that tightrope between not getting too close, but also developing a relationship so that they trust you?
I reckon I'm a bit of a soft cock. I reckon I'm a bit of I actually think I'm a bit of a sycophant. Yeah. I think, if I was to mark myself hard, I kind of fall into that category.
Right.
I'm generally the last person to call for somebody to be thrown out of the team, or
not Pup, obviously.
And thank God that there's an administration, so you can. Administration's fair game.
Yeah.
I'm much softer around the players, and partly because I just respect them so much for what they've achieved. To actually just to get to that level and to play cricket at that level and to compete, I couldn't do it. Even if I had all of that skill, I wouldn't have the mental strength and the character to do what these people do,
and to take the criticism from people. Many people, you get one bad YouTube comment and you're like, I wonder what it will be like for players who are being judged at all times.
And because I came into the game as late and as a colour writer, and I used to say, and I always had this feeling that it was much better for everyone writing about someone who'd made 100 than someone who'd made a duck. Everyone just feels good about that situation. And I remember that my attitude at the time was because Malcolm Conn was the chief cricket writer. And Malcolm can bang a desk. The the press box shakes when Malcolm's typing a hard yarn, literally. And I said, Malcolm Conn fires the cannons, and I tiptoe over the bodies playing the flute. You know, but it was a nice 14.
What about you, Gideon? I sense that you. You guys had a great interview with Pat Cummins last week, sloppy seconds, but nevertheless. And you actually declared from the top of that interview with Pat that you didn't actually know him particularly well and weren't friends.
I don't know him at all. I've never exchanged a word with him.
I admire that too, because if you have a distance, you probably, and you don't care for friendships with players or whatever, you can probably be a little bit more strident in the way that you write or critique.
Look, I mean, it's a difficult game. And the thing that where I sort of lay myself bare is I still play. And I'm not very good. So it's a constantly humbling experience. It's a constant reminder of just how difficult this game is to do well. And I think that's, you should be capable of confronting your mortality in cricket on a regular basis if you still can. No, I don't cultivate relationships with the players. That's just kind of the way that it's worked out. And it suits us both, and that's fine. I've worked very closely with some players. Did a book with Wazam Akram, did a book with Dan Christian. When I've interviewed players, I've often gone quite deep with them. I remember a piece I wrote some years ago about Moses Enriquez and his mental maladies.
You were very invested in Ed Cowan's first
I was
century.
extremely,
But that was to do breathing exercises.
That was because I knew him before he played for Australia. I knew him when he wasn't even in the New South Wales side, because we played together in a game at the SCG, and we got friendly, and so I had the thrill of following him into the Australian side and watching basically the entirety of his test career, his first test and his last test. Actually, I can remember, Pete, I don't know whether I've ever told you this, Ed told me.
Save it for our pod.
I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but he texted me the night that he was told that he'd been selected to play for Australia. And said, keep this to yourself, but I've been picked and I want to share it with you.
Did you gamble on that? Sorry.
No. Well, then about 10 minutes later, you rang me and you said, have you heard anything about the team? And I had
my best source.
It's the one time I've ever lied to you. I said, no, mate. Don't know anything.
Oh, look at that! Because you're in the inner sanctum. Part of the boys.
And I did, because I was friends with Ed, I did pick up things about the inner sanctum that would have been newsworthy, but I was never going to publish them. Yeah. So,
it's a balancing act what you publish and what you don't publish. A lot of it's based on where or how you learn it. I mean, if it's in an environment like that where the people trust you and you're all having a drink and stuff comes out, sometimes I do have to say, hey, remember there's a journalist in the room, or God, I can't wait to tell a real journalist this story. But it's the environment you learn the information in quite often, and sometimes the stories you don't write pay forward, I reckon. I'm not saying that there is no way you don't write a good hard news story, but there are some things. I'm not going to deal with that. And I think we're never had to do really. I mean, even though I've been a news reporter of sorts, it's never really that hard tabloid news. So there's an expectation on say a guy like a Ben Horn, excellent journalist, but he works for all the tabloids. The tabloids are always looking for, a really sharp headline, adjectives in the first part. Everything's a bombshell. Everything's a shock. You've got to go hard.
Like Fox Sports.
You can't, la-di-da like Lawler does. He does it really well, and he does it with great character too, because he always tells people what he's going to, if he's going to go hard at someone, he tells them he's going to go hard at them. He gives them a chance, and everybody respects him for that. That takes a lot, actually, to go to people, and it's easier to hide behind the keyboard and write about them and then, hope they don't call the next day. But good cricket writers, and particularly on tour, the next morning's always the hard one, because traditionally on tour you'd stay with the team. It's not so much these days. Certainly Cricket Ed Al can't afford to stay with the team.
A few more subscribers. That's right. You'll be in the penthouse.
You'd see them at breakfast, and you'd see them reading the piece that you'd written or something like that, and you're going, shit, I've just said that bloke's hopeless and should never have been picked in the first place and blah, blah, blah. So you've actually got to go over in those situations and say, how are we going? How are we with this? I bet you don't like that story. They always respect that though to a degree. I think if you stand in front of them,
Sometimes you pick up something about a player's attitude or a player's manager or a player's personality from simply watching them in repose, don't you? When you're not necessarily talking to them, but you're just seeing them in a group environment. 2023, we were in India. Remember, Pete, we were actually staying in the same hotels as the players because the hotel options were quite limited. And we did see the Australian players interacting with the public and some of their camp followers, and I thought they were terrific.
Yeah,
actually.
they're really respectful.
Really good ambassadors. You actually felt really kind of proud to be associated with them, and they obviously took their responsibilities really seriously. Another example recently, you remind me by having Glenn Maxwell's book there on the table, is we recently lost a member of the cricket writing community, Sam Landsberger. We attended his funeral or the commemorative service, and there was a wake afterwards, and Glenn Maxwell came along,
and Finchy as well,
and they didn't make themselves the centre of attention. They were very sympathetic and solicitous of people who came up to them. They stayed when they didn't have to. They didn't have to turn up, but they did. And I thought you did actually learn something about the kind of people that they were from a scenario like that.
A really nice group of people, this current mob of cricketers.
It's bad for our business.
Shame,
They're the nicest team I've ever encountered.
It's no good.
Yeah. I mean, with all due respect to Ricky Ponting, Australian cricket had a very different character in those days. It was hard-faced. I think I've said it before. The Ponting, cricketers keep you an arm's length away. Ponting always kept you 2 arms lengths away. Yeah.
Well,
and not to say that he wasn't good with the press. He answered questions. He fronted up. He did all that stuff. But this was a test team, and there was a wall around it to a degree, and they were hard blokes. Still are hard blokes.
As journalists, as men of journals, do you guys thrive on a series involving India? Because those series often come with their own pressures and criticisms and challenges that really any other team doesn't really have. Obviously, the Ashes are an enormous series that a lot of people are invested in, but the sheer wave of support that people have, obviously, in India, and the flashpoints, especially here in the most recent series in the last or this century, have been beyond cricket, haven't they? So, as people that report on these things, are you excited by the fandom that comes with India, or is it like a couple of deep breaths because...
No, I mean, everything is outsized with India, and you have to come to terms with that. It is exciting when you are covering a bilateral series where the two competitors have an awful lot of cricket behind them, and everything kind of has a context. A lot of things you have seen before, or their variations on similar themes. I've just done a book recently called Indian Summers, which is a kind of chronicle of Australian-Indian cricket relations, and it's astonishing how much cricket there has been just in the last 10 years. The history skews to recency. A lot of the participants are still around, and their presences have all sorts of connotations and associations as a result. So the minute that India and Australia take the field, there's this tremendous shared heritage. And little things can end up meaning quite a lot.
Journos love a stink.
True. For a stink.
And it's pretty guaranteed. When the worse it gets for everybody else, the better it gets for journalists. Really, isn't it? There's only one person killed in the plane crash. No one's really bothered. But
You're right.
But I've never, you never see journos up and about as say Ben and Chris Barrett and I on that South African sandpaper story, or or so much. We just love stuff you can get your teeth into, like the Monkey Gate thing, for instance, which was massive. But at the same time, you realise just how invested you are in the game too, because they kind of start to wear on you, those things. You don't really like those stories. You feel sympathy for the game and what it's doing to the game, and sort of almost a reluctance to write these things at times. Not that you would ever not write them, but I typed this with a heavy heart almost at times, but you couldn't tell from the size of the headline and how much glee I take at how many people are reading this yarn.
Well, just
this
on
is come on.
and with India coming out here this summer, as you say, Gideon, everything is outsized, probably on account of population alone, but passion. Last week, there was this, alleged ball tampering incident in Mackay between Australia A and India A. And
who broke that story?
Cricket et al. And Pete Lawler. I mean, you've done that a couple of times this summer. You're out in front, I'd say, this summer, because you got the Cam Green story as well. I don't know how many people who listen to the show or whatever, note down who breaks it or whatnot. But like over the course of time, it's good to know you're doing Cricket et al. You're still out in front, But with what happened in Mackay, which kind of ended up evaporating really in and of itself for reasons of detail that mattered. You could still smell the archetypes just sitting beneath the surface. I think heavy-handed Australian officialdom, parochial, potentially biased in the eyes of the opponents, and then here you as soon as you saw the incident, you're like, what's the shadowy, nefarious influence of the BCCI in here that we never quite heard from? Now, neither of those archetypes were fair, right, in that particular situation. But what's both of your senses of ahead of this summer of the broader Australian public, so as distinct from insider elites like yourself, but the broader Australian public's attitudes towards modern international cricket as it's imagined by India at the moment, particularly ahead of summer. Do you think there's a positive attitude towards the visiting Indian team, or do you think there's a suspicion? And what do you make of that?
One of the interesting, just before we get to that point, one of the interesting things about that incident in Mackay, it reminded me of that Perth Test match in 2018, where they'd turned the stump mics up for the first time, and all of a sudden we found ourselves eavesdropping on part of conversations, but never the totality of conversations. It's interesting how we default to that illusory sense of omniscience. Oh, look, we've been right in the middle of that conversation, but we actually had, as you explained in your piece on Friday, the context of that conversation, once it was better understood, explained a lot of the exchanges, which, of course, we were oblivious to when we first heard what we thought was the evidence of our own ears. So you're right, we're very quick to jump to conclusions.
Or we want to stink as well.
Evidence. We want to stink. Yeah. We want to stink.
It fitted the stink template.
Yes, it was. It had stink
there's a
written all
template
over
on a yarn. It's got ball tampering. It's got India. You wear it right. We are all
sooner or later we'll be
a
replaced
petulant
by AI,
player.
won't we? You just put ball tampering India, BCCI in there, and it'll just
talking
come out with a
search
story.
terms. But yeah, I mean, do you think that it's hovering? That there is any of that kind of sentiment ahead of the summer, and people might think that I'm asking that question to try and provoke, but I actually wonder if they're in the current environment of international cricket, where a lot of people will point out the relationship between the BCCI and the BJP and Modi and a sense of inequality if you're not them. Yeah. That there's, and maybe this is too I guess soft or kind, but there are a lot of good people in India. They really are. There's a lot of good, and there's a lot of great history of Indian cricket that you've written about before as well, and a lot of people in India who really care about the fabric of the game. It isn't just seen through the eyes of a current, political movement or anything like that, right? And I just feel like it potentially India lacks good PR here that it actually, that it potentially deserves. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it does. It does. But at the same time, you can't be blind to that. I mean, look what's happening with the Champions Trophy at the moment. It was interesting to hear the PCB chairman the other day saying that politics should be kept out of sport. A man who is himself a political appointee, and of course it's Jay Shah is the son of Amit Shah, who's the Indian Home Minister, and the Indian government is insisting that India cannot tour Pakistan for the Champions Trophy. You can't sort of look away from that, and I think. I agree with the central point that you're making, that there's lots of really good people in India, and when you go there, you have cricket conversations that are beyond anything we can imagine in Australia. The degree of understanding and comprehension, enthusiasm and historical awareness in India is unexampled. You know, the first time I went to India, which is now more than 10 years ago, I felt like, I've actually come to my own country. This is actually where you can have a conversation like this and not feel slightly ridiculous, which sometimes you do in Australia when you take cricket very seriously. So look, they're opposite sides of the same coin. The other thing that enriches this particular summer is that both teams are very experienced. And both teams have lots of senior players, and they have lots of stories attached to them. They have lots of kind of past interchange. Of course, a lot of them play alongside one another in the IPL, so they have external relations that abide and have to be maintained even through the hostility of a Test series. I think you'll see a team two teams that know each other very well this year that will know where to draw the line. I think there's a weight of sensible individuals in it, and maybe some of the more volatile personalities. You know, your David Warners have now stepped down, stepped to one side. I think you're a very good chance of seeing a fantastic Test series this year, perhaps better than the last two times that we've hosted India. The other thing, of course, that India's performances here the last two times they've visited here have raised the general expectation. Perhaps we've forgotten how extraordinary it is that India has been able to best Australia twice within the last 6 years on Australian soil. That's a very high standard for them to live up to, because Australia otherwise against visiting countries has been virtually unassailable.
Pete, let me ask you this. Do you think this summer is what will be forever, like a new summer? Basically, the Australian summer seems to go for about 6 weeks. So we've got 5 tests this year, right? Yeah. So I know there's been some one-dayers, and cricket has been on television for, in Australia on Amazon and Fox, but no free-to-air cricket, I think, since January 28th, the Gambhir Test match. So is that what the new normal will be? Like Australia hasn't really been on TV. They've hardly played any cricket watchable for most Australians. It's a very short season. The Big Bash on at the same time as the tests. I know women's cricket on as well.
We always get anxious this time of year, but I think it's been ever thus that the Australian summer doesn't actually start till Christmas for the broader public.
Yeah.
Nothing works at this time of year. Everyone's still, we journos are getting excited, and people in cricket are, but, everyone's got their kids at school, their office parties, all that stuff that you've got to do at the end of the year. And cricket's always had a very small window, I think. I think people who despair at the state of the game now, very rose-coloured view of the past. The crowds are bigger now. Look at this Border Gavaskar Trophy series that we've got now. It's 5 tests. People will show up, except, once, in the big towns, they won't show up to the first couple of tests. But I think Test cricket's in a really healthy place, and it has so many more outlets. And I just think we're a little bit confused about the past.
Test cricket in Australia, I think.
Test cricket in Australia, Test cricket in India, Test cricket in England, but when in the past? I mean, when in the past was Test cricket stronger than it is now? I mean, there were times in the past when the West Indies were a better side, or when South Africa was a better side. At the moment, it's New Zealand, punching above its weight. But it's essentially only ever been a game played between Australia and England, and then more recently, we've included India in that pack. But I don't think that there's ever been a time when there were 10 Test nations all on even billing, and every year was a great year. I mean, there were summers in Australia where there was no Test cricket at all.
Oh, that's true.
Can you comprehend that?
But the last time that happened was 1969-70.
Well,
that's a long time ago. Unless you count rest of the world in 71 too. We have got habituated to having 5 or 6 Test matches every summer.
We have.
And you're right.
But it's a recent thing. It's a recent thing in the evolution of a game that's been around for a couple of hundred years.
And you're right. You're right to say that in some ways the public patronage of Test matches in Australia is of a very high calibre and has shown remarkable resilience over the last 10 or 15 years, even though the support remains concentrated in those main franchises, Australia and India. There
are 2 networks broadcasting it on TV. There are 3 radio stations doing it, and
Yep.
There's 7,852 podcasts.
So to that end, Gids, I'll ask you, like, do you think that CA makes the gamble then that if Peter's right that the window is so small, and then,
It always has been.
and always,
Yeah, I
has,
think
it
it
always
always
has
has
been
been.
small,
Yeah,
and
I
so
do think it has.
the window for attention is only that long. Is that why CA might gamble and think like, well, if we played the Big Bash right now, no one would go.
Yeah.
It has to be during that
Well,
window.
that's why
when-
the Big Bash is after Christmas.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only, yeah. I mean, there was I remember the contempt during the players' dispute with which the Players Association suggestion of moving the BBL earlier in the year to things. Hey, and look, I mean, I know perhaps people's attentions did turn towards the summer earlier in the past because, the VFL ended and then there was the Hardy Frado 500 and then it was just a long summer. But, now footy has bled right in, doesn't it? In this town, you get 7 days of cricket, I reckon. It's when the test is on, and that's, as far as the Herald Sun's concerned.
Well, the articles this
time.
week are about a Collingwood player making 100 down the coast. So
How do you hit him?
it's still footy. Yeah, no.
Well, yeah,
Red, I think.
got a footy angle on the cricket. But people are watching the Shield on stream now. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. There's
Yeah.
been some there's been some real engagement with the first couple of rounds of the Shield cricket this year. I mean, it's not 35,000 people turning up for the Christmas match at the MCG between New South Wales and Victoria, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think one of the advantages that cricket has, which is sometimes underestimated, is because test matches are such long duration, they lay down very, very deep memories. Mm-hmm. I mean, who talks about games of football from the 1980s? But we talk about test matches from the 1980s. And when Australia versus India take the field, we immediately think of all the pre-existing signposts in that evolving relationship, because there is a genuine arc in that relationship. There is an evolving narrative from India coming here as an exotic, spicy alternative to India being kind of meat and drink, and actually the provider of quite a lot of Australian cricket's economic sustenance. So it's an evolving story, and it's gone in unexpected ways too. You wouldn't necessarily have foreseen India being as formidable as they have been on Australian soil. And I'm going to go back to your point earlier. Sometimes we generalise on the basis of our experience in Australia as to what the state of the cricket world is. We are in a very, very privileged position here. We are guaranteed an orderly summer every year. We are guaranteed 5 to 6 test matches. That's an extraordinary stroke of good fortune for us.
Yes.
If you're in Pakistan, of course, you didn't see Test cricket for 15 years. Just imagine the deprivations under which that country has existed. The West Indies, how long since we've been to the West Indies for a tour? We haven't been since 2015. A lot of countries around the world are on very, very short rations as far as international cricket is concerned. Even when you get international cricket, you are not guaranteed to see the best players at the moment. If you're in South Africa at the moment, you're watching the Indian second 11 play an ODI series. If you're in the West Indies, you're seeing the England second 11 playing. We take it for granted that we get the best of all possible worlds in this country. And I'm not actually sure that we're living up to our side of the bargain. We've just played a second 11 against Pakistan in a white ball series, and we've had our arse handed to us, deservedly so. We shouldn't be taking some of our privileges for granted in this country.
I look at this the team that's playing this one day series and think, well, there's been a shift there too, hasn't it? In the past, the broadcasters would have screamed the roof down, and maybe they are, and I don't know it, in the background, demanding that the best players play in those competitions. The other side of it is that Australia is prioritising its test team. And you can't criticise that, can you? They want the test team to be at its absolute peak. So one day cricket suffers, T20 cricket suffers. Break out the violins.
Well, we were talking last week on the show. It's just remarkable that South Africa may well be in the World Test Championship final, and they sent a D team to New Zealand
That's
That
right.
was in
they
February.
did.
That was
They
in
did.
February,
That
yeah.
was a shocking
So,
situation,
but they
wasn't
might
it?
end up being the first or second best test team in the world in the last 2 year cycle
Yeah.
somehow. So I don't know what any of it means.
Well, like at a macro view, right? A lot of these things happen because sport generally, or all entertainment principles generally, militate towards putting more on all of the time, right? And you just don't have enough players to be around for three formats, some of which are unaffordable to nations that can't sustain it and stuff like that. And are we in a wild west of cricket at the moment where it will rationalise in some way? You know, some have suggested that might be Test cricket that needs to rationalise to 4 days, or there are fewer games, or the 1 day format altogether might go so that we can fit things in. But at the moment, it feels like, and I think Tim Wigmore said this the other day, there's something like 500 days of cricket into 365 days that exists. Do you have a view on that? I mean, I know you're at the World Cricket Connect Symposium, Gideon. You know, the eminent minds of the game all came together, except for Jay Shah. Where do you see it going?
Yeah, in a general state of resignation,
right?
Or in a general sense that the market forces will dictate, and I get that, but sometimes people seem to be oblivious to the fact that they are the market forces. There is actually human agency involved. It's a game. It's not an industry. I mean, or it's an industry inside a game rather than a game inside an industry. And cricket doesn't have to be this way if people demonstrated a degree of independence or courage or pretended that they actually had the fate of the game in their hands. Nothing is inevitable until it happens.
Just want to. I loved hearing what you said, Pete, before, with really an optimistic view about the place of cricket in Australia in particular and Test cricket. But I think, to Gideon's point about market forces, what seems odd to me, if you approach the success of cricket or the health of cricket in Australia through that prism of market forces, is that Australia seems to be investing in a format, through like 7 years of worth of announcements of where Test cricket is going to be played, that we're doubling down on our Test team at the expense of white ball cricket. It seems to be completely at odds with the macro forces of the rest of the world, which does not seem to be investing in Test cricket as far as I can see. I can't see any other nations, and I exclude increased Test cricket for women at the moment, but from a men's perspective, the trend seems to be away from Test cricket, but Australia is going the other way.
I would have thought that India is pretty keen on its on producing the best Test team it can, and still and still prioritize. I think India still.
Well, I suppose
even Jay Shah gets clipped over the ears a fair bit, but India prioritises Test cricket, and in fact, didn't Jay Shah introduce some sort of rule to the domestic cricket that, unless you are playing red ball cricket, you sort of fight back against the, and that is a significant cash cow they've got with the IPL, and perhaps they've got the luxury to do those things. England similarly, so there's a lot of commitment to Test cricket, but at the same time, they've perhaps compromised to some degree by sticking this 100 thing in the middle of the summer. I
mean, with India, for example, they have the ability to invest in all of it at the moment, right? But I mean, their broadcast money is heavily weighted towards the IPL, right? That's where the money is.
That's where the money comes from.
And anecdotally, well, it's one I heard anecdata. When we were in India last year for the Border Gavaskar Trophy, doing live shows in every city, anecdotally, so many people said, "Why are you here for this? You should be here for the IPL." That's just a story, right? But whereas in Australia, the broadcast money seems to still be focused on who can show vision of the tests, right?
Yeah, the crowds have fallen off. Are definitely one thing that live attendance at Test match cricket has diminished in India. I'm quite certain of that. Understandably, well, Indian people prefer a shorter form of the game, and I think it sort of suits the Indian life as well to a degree. Yeah, there's a bit of a sadness around that, but the game's still strong, isn't it? And I mean, you can sate your cricket appetite with all the other stuff that's on. Once upon a time, Australia only went there every 40 bloody years or something. They were very reluctant tourists of that part of the world, as you said. I mean, even after that, I can remember Mike Coward saying even up in the 2004 tour, complaining that there's so few series in the next decade. It's changed a lot since then.
Part of that is distorted by the fact that India plays where it does, plays its test matches where it does. It doesn't play test matches in Kolkata regularly. It doesn't play test matches in Mumbai regularly. Yeah. And we played in Nagpur last year. We played an indoor.
They've got to share them round though, don't they?
They do. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And,
there are. The Indian, one thing I reckon, the Indian cricket fan outstrips any other cricket fan in world cricket. But not just for passion for their own team, but for the numbers of what you were saying about this is your country when you got there. The number of people who will come up to you and be absolutely passionate about Australian cricket, and know Australian cricket better than me and most passionate Australian fans. Or West Indies, we talked about Bharat before. Bharat grew up barracking for the West Indies. Where in Australia did anyone ever grow up with a passion for the other team? We're very sort of single cell amoeba down there. There are broader, and there are vast numbers of broader, better educated, in cricket terms, and more open-minded cricket fans than you meet anywhere else in the world, I think.
I'm a big New Zealand cricket fan.
Yourself.
Yeah, always have been, yeah.
Well, I love the culture of New Zealand cricket, that student culture in Dunedin of bringing the couch to the ground and throwing chickens at players and then burning the couch at the end of the game. And can I get a bathroom break?
Is this a first for the great cricketer?
That's good.
Well, you never had people this old on before. We've got to go to the bathroom more often.
Okay, Pete's back. So here's a question just about the team specifically. We've been talking about, the choice of establishment media, versus the dirtbag podcasts. I'm
feeling really out of my depth here.
Well, I think we can't rely on institutional structures anymore in this, in this Trump world. And in the same way that the selectors can't rely on Sheffield Shield openers anymore.
I still think you're getting well served if you're buying the papers and you're getting Brett Egg and Tommy Decent's coming on board, and Benny Horn and Dan Cherney, and you're getting a bit of Malcolm Knox on the weekend.
They're all good guys.
There's still some serious cricket journalism going on in the papers.
I was really just using it as an analogy for a question about the opening batters, but
okay. Well, you've try another one, mate. Yeah.
Can Australia rely on specialist Shield openers anymore to see off Bumrah at Test level? Are you happy with the McSweeney selection?
Look, in a sense, I think the other contenders disqualified themselves. They just didn't make an unassailable case. It becomes possible to argue for McSweeney because no one else has presented an irresistible argument for selection. I was in favour of Bancroft at the start of the season. I was in favour of him last season, actually, because I thought if you're this guy, last 2 years he's averaged 50 and made 200s. That's exactly what he was meant to do. He's chosen exactly the wrong time to shit the bed. It's a real shame. I think Marcus Harris he's a good player, he's a good first-class player, but his first-class record isn't astounding, and he does have a tradition of getting early hundreds in Sheffield Shield seasons and putting himself up there, but failing perhaps to follow through. I'm not sure he's a better player than he was in 2018-19 when he had his longest spell in the Australian team. Constas, well, I know that you've seen the future and its name is Sam Constas, but if you take out that game...
that was 3 weeks ago, though.
But if you take that game out of his record, he averages 26.5 in first-class cricket. You can't pick Blake on that basis. He'll be a good player. He's 19. There's plenty of upside, but it was too soon for him.
You can do anything with numbers, and a lot of people jump to first-class averages and go, he's only averaging 28. Yeah, but... How have they gone in the last 6 months or the 12 months? Immediacy is far more important.
Well, there was an interesting piece of data yesterday at that presser from from George.
Yeah, you've written about this morning, haven't you, about him when he comes in the first 10 overs, and he hasn't gone that well.
He hasn't gone that great. He's had experience, but he hasn't had success.
No, but he is a guy who's come into his own of late and is ripe for the picking.
He's
trending. You couldn't have picked him 3 years ago.
No,
he wasn't as good at cricket 3 years ago. You couldn't pick now. But you go back to this point, and it's in the water now, this thing like, has Shield cricket let us down because it hasn't got an opener ready to play in the test team? Did it ever? I mean, I know there will be times where there's been vacancies come in the opening position and they've gone to Shield cricket and gone, there's the best opener in Shield cricket. Generally, they don't do that, I'd argue. If we're sort of just going back through my mind, they've manufactured openers.
Yeah.
It's not a recent
Probably the
trend.
last time they did it was Renshaw. 2016-17.
Yeah.
Where they picked him, and he actually looked the goods, and then they dropped him because of his Sheffield Shield form the following season.
Yeah.
It's got to be the most costly month in recent Australian Test selection history. Is the string of failures he put together at the start of 2017-18, which bumped him down the bottom of the pile again.
David Warner's stocks will potentially rise in the next few years because we'll realise how important he was. That consistency that he gave at the top of the order is so critical, but so hard to find.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Usman now and he looks like he's been there all his life. Well, he hasn't. He's been there since he was 35 or something doing that. He couldn't do it earlier in his life. Warner had, 12, 13 different opening partners during his career. I love that we've got this kid in now, McSweeney. It's really exciting. Everybody in cricket likes a little bit of fresh meat, don't they? We were talking before, and with all due respect to Marcus Harris and Cameron Bancroft, who are very good cricketers, it's exciting to get a new cricketer in. They are a known quantity where you don't get that buzz of the early relationship. If you put it in those terms of you've met someone new, you want to get to know them, you want to see what they're capable of. Strap yourself in for the journey.
Would you say you're enjoying a new toy?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is that a euphemism?
No, just going to the shop and get a toy.
You people
Get a toy.
Of course, there's always a novelty in a new player that you haven't seen much of.
New shapes,
it's a shiny new toy
in a new position.
New stories,
new to him in a new venue. He'll be playing the first Test match in Perth, and it was flying in Perth last night.
Yep.
So if he's up to it, we'll soon find out.
But it's that excitement, and it doesn't come around all that often, does it? With a young batter coming into a team,
especially in Australia,
we've had
we're like a
such
stick,
consistency in the team for so long. I mean, the last real excitement I can remember was probably around Hughesy in 2009. It was so exciting, wasn't it? It just gets you on the edge of the seat. That stuff. I was lucky enough to be on that tour. But apart from that, God, they've just ticked along, haven't they? This mob, they're a good cricket team.
Yeah.
Is it unfathomable for Australia to lose again to India, or can it be fathomed?
I think it can be fathomed. Yeah, India are very good, and they've got a team that actually stacks up pretty well in Australia with a lot of prior Australian experience. Often it happens that teams come here and they're completely at sea because the conditions are so alien. All the leading players for India have played a lot of cricket in Australia, and they've had success here.
They're more at home in Australia, I'd argue, than they own India, the batters. You probably have...
those batters would love to get out of India.
Oh, God's sake, it's a
dreadful
nightmare.
place to score runs.
At home, he feels like a tourist. It's no fun being an Indian batter in India anymore.
No.
You must go... Kohli must be licking his lips about getting to Australia. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, no, he's certainly been breathing a sigh of relief because it's been unmitigated despair being an Indian batter over the last 3 years at home. It's made the designation home almost meaningless. Great players look for good signs. They look for talisman. And of course, Kohli made 100, didn't he, in 2018-19 in Perth. He had a game that looked really well suited to those conditions. I'd love to see him do it again. I think there's a lot of goodwill towards Kohli in Australia too.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, we've watched his evolution as a player. He's come here a lot since 2011-12. We've seen every conceivable model of Kohli, haven't we? We've seen the stormy petrel of his first series.
When
We've seen
flipped the bird
the
to
ascendant,
the
ascendant captain in 2014-15, and the peacemaker in 2018-19. There's always that element of combustibility and unpredictability about him.
We like that though, don't we?
Yeah, we love writing about him too. You know, when it's a slow day at the cricket, you just think, what's Coley up to?
Yeah,
what's Coley up to? I'll write a Coley column.
Yeah.
Well done, Gideon.
Really,
we'll make that the clip, Gideon. So this is how this works. Gents, thanks so much for your time. Wide-ranging chat on the state of media and stories and the global game at home as well. Take your point, Pete. There's a lot of people doing great work in the establishment press as well. But if people want to catch your musings via Cricket Hotel, it's crickethotel.com. Sign up. You're going to get Gideon and Pete pretty much every day for the summer writing about the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and I get involved when I can. And I think the great shout out to people, if you are signed up to Cricket Hotel right now and you do pay, you are sending Gideon and Pete around for the summer. So shout out to those people. Get on board crickethotel.com. Gents, thanks so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
How come you snub us? Here you go.
I do the tweets from the Grey Cricketer account.
For us.
So,
Yeah.
cool.
Thanks for having us on. That was great. Yeah.
All good.
Cheers.
Thank you very much to Pete and Gideon for joining us in studio for that chat. I enjoyed the chat. It was a nice chat, broad-ranging chat.
Wanting to show off, decades of wisdom, which I think they did.
Pezza, this episode is brought to you by Saily. Saily is the new eSIM service app brought to you by Nord Security. Here, you can choose from several affordable eSIM plans from over 160 countries and 8 regions. With a Saily eSIM, you'll always have a connection when needed.
With Saily, you'll save money on roaming fees and have a safe and secure internet connection when abroad. These are just a few of the many great features that Saily has to offer.
You download the app, you buy a plan, you install the eSIM. There is a QR code on your screen if you want to scan that and download the app. That's right, this episode, thanks to Saily. Pezza, WBBL. The Thunder, led by Phoebe Litchfield, now there's the future, are leading the WBBL. Up there with the Renegades on 8 points. Then it goes Hobart Hurricanes, Brisbane Heat, Sydney Sixers, Perth Scorchers all on 6 points. And then you get to the cellar dwellers of your Stars and your Strikers. Unlike the Strikers, to be right down the bottom there with 6 played and only 2 points, that being 1 win and 5 losses. Highlight for me, Pezza, over the last sort of week or so is Scorchers against Renegades. Not sure if you saw this. This Sophie Devine, Harmanpreet, Kaur, argy-bargy, as was described.
Go on.
As described by Beth Mooney, who was on the mic wicket keeping. So what's happened is Sophie Devine is running into bowl. Harmanpreet Kaur is batting, and she's got her head down right at the point where Sophie Devine comes in and actually delivers the ball. So she's actually not looking at the bowler.
Right.
Now, ball just passes the off stump. Moons takes it cleanly. And Harmanpreet Kaur backs away and says, "What's doing? I wasn't ready." Now, Beth Mooney, then there's sort of a little bit of back and forth between players and umpires there. Umpires sort of then converge and discuss what's going on there. Do they need to re-bowl delivery? Beth Mooney on the mic said, "I'm not sure who would win between a battle of those two because Harmanpreet scares me a little bit," which is completely relatable. Then they end up bowling another ball for a dot ball, and then Moon says, "All that for a dot." But that was a nice little exchange between Harmanpreet Kaur, who everyone is scared of, and Sophie Devine.
Always Harmanpreet Kaur.
Always.
Just always involved.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Always there or thereabouts, or there,
and,
or in it.
Less to do with runs next or wins next to a name, just things that happen.
Just things that happen.
Things that happen.
Lizelle Lee got 150 red
Cut loose
against the Scorchers for the Hurricanes. She's now second on the runs list with 221 runs after scoring 150.
Red.
She's 94 runs behind Elise Berry, who's 315 runs from 6 innings, averaging 78 for the Sixers, opening the batting course with Heelzo. But Lizelle Lee, 150. Records red, everywhere.
From 75 rocks, highest score in WBBL history. She put on 114 with Elise Villani, who herself only contributed 14. Most sixes in a WBBL game. I mean, no drive-by on Elise Villani there, by the way. Lizelle Lee just cut loose. Villani gets off strike. Play on. For me.
Sort of like a Maxwell Cummins situation in the Men's World Cup that time where, Maxwell was just bombing him, Cummins just at the other end. Same with Villani and Lee here.
Yep. She beats the previous highest WBBL score, Grace Harris, 136 red, but still behind Elise Perry. I think Will Swanton put it best. Elise Perry's playing like she's in a Paul Simon song. Diamonds are on the soles of her shoes. Just still going. Elise Perry. He goes on to say few of her teammates are lending much assistance as the Sydney Sixers are outside the top 4, which is also true, but not the first time Pez has done it on her own. And just shout out. I have one, my major highlight though. Here goes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
If that's okay. So you might have caught this because a lot of people did, but I'm scrolling socials, as is my want, and I see a clip that seems to pertain to WBBL. Okay, so here's what I see: a Renegades player is coming off with an injured foot. Okay, she's being held by assistants or players in vests and stuff like that.
Yep.
So far, so good. Hobbling. Next minute, zoom in camera on a Renegades player. So like that's a cut. Like Renegades player's bare, albeit strapped foot.
Got it.
Okay, zoom in on the foot. You're seeing foot only, plus
Foot
some
stuff.
strapping.
Okay, got it.
And you've got to understand at this point, Bag Raiders, Shooting Stars playing as well,
Of course it is, yeah.
And that's accompanying in the background. The foot then rapidly disappears from shot. It's pulled in away from camera. I think it's been seen on camera. It's been pulled in. Then commentator Al Nicholson, venerable Al Nicholson,
Yes.
colleague,
Yes.
following the camera says, trying to hide it. The camera then pans up and Lisa Stalakis says, wrong person, because the camera's now fixed on Millie Illingworth.
Okay.
Right? There's Millie Illingworth, who bowled very well in this game, by the way. Wheels. She's looking at the camera, crossing her legs, and her feet are underneath her to fully hide her feet.
Okay.
She's just noticed that the camera's been zoomed in on her bare foot.
Okay, right.
Right? And she's laughing, going, what was that for?
What's doing?
Why have you zoomed in on my feet on national TV?
Yeah.
Right? Like foot only.
Yeah. There are sickos out there.
Teammates laughing everywhere, so it all seems jovial. And then there's a super cut. Now there's Millie rubbing her fingers together in the money gesture.
If you want them, you got to pay top dollar.
Pay me now.
Pay me.
Fingers, the thumb and the forefinger.
Pay to play stuff.
Pay to play. That's right. And there's the camera again. She's playing to it, going, eyes up. Keep your eyes up here.
Come on. I'm up here, cameraman.
I just noticed that this clip had 7.2 million views.
Jesus Christ.
312,000 likes and 108,000 shares. Now, that'd have to be... Wasn't even from Channel 7, from 7 Cricket either, by the way.
Okay.
I think it was the Alternative Commentary Collective. So, another organisation who's allowed to use footage.
Just the way it is.
Yeah, that's all right. John Boy, whatever. Just use the footage, no problem. That'd have to be then. So 7.2 million views at the time that I saw it, 312,000 likes, 108,000 shares.
Okay.
That'd have to be the single biggest piece of viewed content in the history of Australian women's cricket, wouldn't it?
Be up there.
Would there be a clip out there that's done greater numbers than that?
Well, I mentioned before the clip about, sorry, can I just interject? The clip I was talking about with Harmanpreet and Sophie Devine had 150,000 likes. So that's
312K.
It's not even touching this.
And there's not even an Indian character involved in this. And I say that for the purposes of population. Now, I think looking at the comments, there are Indians involved.
Sure, okay. Tell her for a reason.
Or just foot stuff. But a lot of people into it. And I'd careful before you go and have a look at the comments. But I'm just saying, and again, Millie Illingworth bowled very well. Now, that was obviously edited by the people involved in that. And with the music overlaid and stuff. Seven, in their wisdom, haven't chosen to highlight a zoom in of a woman's foot.
Right.
But there is another cut. This one from Seven, because JL's commentating at the same time.
Now we're talking.
And when Millie Illingworth does the money gesture, JL goes, "Oh, righto." I just think that's good WBBL stuff for me. Anyway.
Always struck me as a big old foot guy.
No, I mean, you got to look at it for yourself. He's more like, firstly, there's a barefoot on camera.
Yeah.
Then there's Millie Illingworth basically going, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah.
Putting me on camera, laughing.
Yeah.
And then she does they go back to her. She has fun with it.
Pay to play.
Yeah. And then JL, poor bloke, just sitting there, just going, like, "What the what am I
do we do with this?" Yeah.
Righto. Anyway, I just wanted to quickly on other teams play cricket. England, West Indies men's. Just a couple of things to shout out. Phil Salt brushed an invite to a Rihanna party over there in the West Indies, and then made 100.
Yeah.
He just said Rihanna can wait, so that's pretty.
Then you got to Globe next game.
Yeah, that's dumb from him basically.
His record on the West Indies must be amazing because
he's deeply underrated. Phil Salt. He's just a great player.
Captain of the White Ball side, isn't he?
Another moment where Alzari Joseph didn't like fielding positions.
I'm out of here.
So then he just blew Jordan Cox's glove off with a frightening delivery, got him out, wasn't even happy, and then just stormed off the field.
Yeah, then got off.
Good. And you mentioned earlier, just from an England perspective, Anderson wants to play IPL, so all good.
Same.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not sure if you saw that the ICC, this was actually last week, but the ICC announced the next Future Tours program for the women's game had added Zimbabwe to the schedule. That means that there's now 11 teams in there instead of 10, plus a T20 Champions Trophy. Now, what's also interesting is that the Women's Premier League, that's the WPL, will be played in January to February from 2026 onwards, while the 100 will be in August and the WBBL will be in November. They've all been allocated dedicated windows in the new Women's Future Tours program for the 2025 to 29 cycle. The reason that's interesting is because, from an Australian perspective, is because the Ashes that are this year, obviously happening in January, that'll be the last time CA can schedule home fixtures for the Australian side in January because the WPL will be played in that window now, which is obviously extremely lucrative for the players and coaches involved. So that's another thing we were talking about before about the Australian summer changing, or Australians CA perhaps feeling like they've lost control of their summer. You know, the best teams coming out here, we decide when we play, who we play against when. That's all rapidly changing right in front of our eyes. So for the last time in the next 4 years to the end of the 2029 cycle, last time we'll be able to see the Australian side play in January. Right. So a big old Ashes coming up.
I understand there is a little bit more Test cricket for the women though in this FTB as well, which I think is
that's right. That's right.
A couple of teams that don't normally get Test cricket get a couple of games. So.
Yep. And finally a Champions Trophy. So
can't wait for the Champions Trophy.
Hashtag AskTGC is brought to you by Smith Optics Australia. Got a couple of great questions this week, Pezza, but it is brought to you by Smith Optics Australia. Use the code FAST for 25% off plus a free TGC cloth gift.
Once again, Smith Optics demonstrating that they're the leader in their category. Couple of notes just from this week gone by. Smith Optics throw up stories every single week. Every week. It manages to get itself involved.
And the punters are getting behind it as well because they are noticing it on screen in your faces.
And apologies for giving you a 25% discount using the code FAST for this eyewear that one needs for myriad reasons through the summer.
Yes.
You're playing your cricket, your athleisure, just wanting to look fast and intimidating in social situations. Just having something if you want to go for a coffee, Justin Lang used to talk about smiling just to get himself going. If you want to go for a coffee, you're feeling down, and you want to look like you've got something about you, chuck on a pair of Smith Optics. Once again, 25% off, use Go Fast.
If you want to go to games and look at people's feet, put these on.
Once again,
incognito mode. Now you'll stand up like a sore thumb, but you'll look good while doing it.
Yeah. Shaheen Afridi from Pakistan. This isn't just Australia. Shaheen Afridi, wearing his green ruckus along with a couple of other Pakistan players.
Yes.
And it's my right not to say who they are.
Yes, that's right.
Bareback Morris. Now there is a moment where, and we wouldn't show this footage on account of rights obligations, and also just getting fucking busted every single time we use 1 second, but everyone else
threatened with jail time.
But everyone else is good to go, apparently, and get all the commercial benefits therein. But we're good with that. That went somewhere else, but Bareback Morris came in and dropped a catch. Wasn't the first or the last of the Australian team.
You're Zippy.
He dropped a couple.
Wasim Akram was very quick to say that's the 13th drop catch in his career.
That's right. The thing about that was, and I'm revealing that I watched some of the game, but the game earlier in Adelaide, Zippy also dropped the catch because someone said yours, and they said that his record for catching is he's taken 19 and he's dropped 12.
Right.
And Wasim actually said that's pretty good.
So anyway. I think that was in retaliation because Shaheen dropped an early one again in Adelaide, and they were very within about I don't think the ball had hit the ground yet, and they had a graphic, which said he caught 13, dropped 12.
Well, that's Fox cricket doing its job.
Yeah.
Like at the start of every summer, once again, it's our right for our commentators to instruct the opposition about how to play in our conditions.
Exactly.
And that's why this summer has got off to the wrong, the wrong foot. If hapless opposition who've been playing in Multan for the last couple of tests on like industrial fan-driven decks where there's no bounce and spin, come out to our chest decks and then chest us into oblivion, we can't tell them how to play.
No.
That's how a summer's meant to start.
If your commentary team isn't playing for the team, what's the point?
Fox trying to do its job.
They're doing their bit.
Cummins is at Coldplay. Mate, he better take 7 for in the first test.
He's out. McSweeney can open the bowling.
Cummins wearing Smith, though, by the way, and he's had his eyes done.
Yeah, at Coldplay.
But Bareback Morris comes in and drops his catch. Right. And can't show the footage, but he drops a catch. People will remember it. Everyone's watching it. And he comes in, he drops a catch, but have a look at the verts that he's wearing, staying firmly fixed.
They stay fixed.
Hats off, full tumble roll, and the verts that he's wearing, Smith Optics verts, are still there providing chroma pop vision.
Don't move a fucking inch.
So the product is, although Bareback drops a catch.
Yeah, well, that's his fault. He's an idiot. Hot,
but the product,
hot idiot.
The product is A1 quality. If you're going to take catches in the summer, if you're going to drop catches in the summer, you know that Smith Optics are going to stay firmly fixed with the chroma pop vision.
Yeah.
Use the code FAST, 25% off.
Heavy Peace said, how excited do you reckon Virat is to meet Harley Reid next week? Well, we understand that Virat's touched down in Perth. He's also got some friends in Perth. Virat?
Yeah, he does. But there's a couple of things we need, in the absence of being able to chest out a hapless Asian team and instruct them how to play in our conditions all summer, let's at least have Virat awkwardly holding a yellow Sharon with Harley Reid. Let's have that. Okay, on the front page of the West Australian, who will not be using Hindi.
Can Virat do a net session in a West Coast Guernsey?
Yes.
Will he be a cricket enthusiast?
So Virat should be doing 2K time trials.
He'd probably win. He's very fit and vegan.
That's what we want to see. See, that's how you get the West Aussies and generally the footy population, which is just Australia, interested in the cricket. Let's have Virat Kohli atop the West Coast 2K time trial ladder.
They're now called the West Coast Super Kings, but that's a separate issue.
That's a separate issue, yeah.
Willie, being cricket enthusiast, said, should we just not play ODI bilateral series and focus only on winning ODI World Cups? Good point.
That's said as though that hasn't been the case for 15 years.
Yeah. Do you remember when we lost the first 2 games of the World Cup and we were about to tee off and then we went on one of the greatest runs of all time and then just won the thing and then no one cared?
Yeah. It was quite obvious that was going to happen at that point as well.
I thought England had a terrible World Cup. Embarrassing.
Michael Clark's comments were disgraceful at that point.
Roll the clip, Charlie. Said, JL back when? I like that.
Yeah, let's get JL.
Benito Pussolini. Given McSweeney's selection, should Cameron Bancroft begin some kind of auction for his Sandpaper Gate testimony? Maybe TGC could crowdfund for the exclusive release.
I mean, that is the interesting one about not picking Bancroft, because you'd imagine he has, perhaps not the Warner-esque nuclear codes.
Not the nuclear
he doesn't have the codes, but
he knows where they are.
He's got access. It's fascinating.
Can't read out that name. Fellow Pay Pig alerted me that one of his teammates was arrested during the off-season / AFL trade period. When we inevitably play this coat, what's the dynamic vis-a-vis batting pads with ankle monitor on? Should I sledge him for the heinous crime, or should I just shut the fuck up in order to protect myself from this psychopath? Well, there's absolutely no way you're going to be sledging someone that you know has been arrested for a heinous crime.
Yeah, generally speaking, if someone's wearing an ankle bracelet on the field, they're probably not a target.
Yeah.
I would have thought. Unless you have sort of information as to the nature of their criminality, like if it's white collar embezzlement, then perhaps it's on.
Yeah, those kind of players can blow hot and cold, can't they? And the
embezzlers?
They'll likely get themselves out. I don't think you need to get in the ear too much.
Yeah, they're frauds.
Wasp v Rock Spider. Without knowing the future of ODI cricket, would you say it's time for your listeners to crack Michael Bevan's head open and feast on the goo inside?
I like that. It's like...
yes, I do.
Yeah, we lose a series, and as I've said earlier, the format's dead.
And we don't care. Hados' hot hat rack. Why, on my nightly trip to empty my tiny bladder, did I hear my dad listening to the Cummins interview in the other bathroom? He hasn't made eye contact with me since I got a diamond duck in fifths.
I mean, if he's only, I say this is a 39-year-old, but if he's only going to the bathroom once at night, then he's doing pretty well. It's something that happens as you age.
Yeah, I think we all know why his dad was in the bathroom listening to the Cummins interview. Paype picked a peck of pickled something. I misheard the phrase pronouns as throwdowns recently. So what are your throwdowns? I identify as fast medium. Cheers. Skinning the thinner cattle. Would an exhibition match between Perth Scorchers and Molten Sultans have delivered a better crowd yesterday?
Well, it almost was the Scorchies team.
I think that would have been good.
Yep.
I'm not sure about the Molten Sultan side, but I'll give it a shake. Shan Solka. Boys, if we created a test team of US presidents, where would Trump bat? Would Biden bat 12, not bowl and field, fine leg to fine leg? Thoughts? I mean, batting 12 and not bowling and fielding, I don't really understand that. But, I mean, Biden wouldn't make an all-time 11, I don't think. He has said he's a transitional president before he went on and, just decided to run again for a bit. Trump's in there. Washington captain.
I probably, I wouldn't have Trump in my 11 of US presidents personally.
I bet it's a batting order, though.
Yeah.
No?
Well, I mean, I'm probably going to need more time to sort this out, I think. But
every club needs a super pig.
Every club does need a super pig. That is true. The president's back.
I think you have both Bushes in there. Father-son stuff.
Oh, I see. Yep.
You're going to have Obama. Obama's batting 3.
Mm-hmm.
George Washington.
George W. Bush would have stretching circle stories.
Big time. And he's got a great arm on him, as we saw when he threw the first pitch out at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, with respect.
Yeah.
To that alone.
Something to think about.
Yep. For
the future ahead. Well, Pezza, what a great week it's been. The cricket's almost here, despite it being actually here.
Yep. It's almost here. It's almost starting.
We're just warming up. The players are warming up.
India's nearly here.
Their vocal cords.
Yep.
Coldplay's a good show. It's a good show. And, yeah.
I saw Coldplay at the Toyota Center in Houston in 2012.
How was that?
How's that?
Did you just go past the ground? How's that?
It was good.
You can find TGC on Apple or Patreon if you want more of this kind of gear as you sink your teeth into the summer. We'll be back tomorrow for Wasted Saturdays on your YouTubes. That being Wednesday, if you listen to this on a different time of the week than what it is right now. That being Tuesday. The cricket's almost here. We're almost here. I'm coming. You're coming. India's coming. India's here. See you guys next week. Cheers.